Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Live from iRacing's virtual Daytona International Speedway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to the 2025 iRacing Daytona 500. Over the course of the last few days and through the rest of the weekend, some of the top drivers on the iRacing service are going head-to-head in a 500-mile gauntlet here at the World Center of Racing, hoping to call themselves an iRacing Daytona 500 champion. And on this Friday night, we are here with top split coverage of the open side of the iRacing 500, and this session has brought out some of the biggest names across the service. We'll watch them do battle here tonight with a virtual Harley J. Earl on the line. Myself, Evan Pasoko, Derek Watson along for the call with you. Our producer downstairs is Hugo Luis. And Derek, you've had some on-track time this week in Daytona thus far, winning your split a little bit earlier on, and now you have gone the way of old drivers once that success has passed, washed up and into the booth alongside myself, where tonight we'll watch a lot of familiar faces.
Yeah, right. That's how it goes. You win a couple 500s, you become a quote-unquote expert at what you're doing, right? So we'll see how that goes. But isn't it fitting we're here tonight, February 14th in the U.S. on Valentine's Day? Because, Evan, we have a race of 37 drivers who would love nothing more than to win a Daytona 500. It's a few hours away from finding out who does it. Maybe a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. But, boy, someone's going to come away really, really happy when all is said and done.
And it's interesting because at different levels of this, there's more than 1,500 drivers competing in this session here tonight. You get to some of the lower splits, drivers just want to survive. They just want to get through it. If you're in the top split like we're going to be watching here tonight, you're here to win it all. Of course, it is early in the year for this 2025 iRacing special events calendar, but with the month of January behind us, some real big ones coming up. But on the oval side, at least, here in Daytona, of course, the Indy 500 coming up in May, and then the longest race on the NASCAR special events calendar, the Coke 600, as we work our way into the summer months. And then we'll be back here once more in July for 400 miles, this time under the light. So still a long way to go, not only this week for the iRacing Daytona 500, but also for the rest of the year on the iRacing special events calendar. So if you're a member of the service, highly encourage you to pick a race and participate in it. But if not, we will be here with you through all of those special events all season long. Practice and the attached qualifying session to this server has drawn to a close, so we are set to go down trackside. Let's take a look at your starting grid. It starts with the driver from the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, the number 12 ranked driver in this race based on iRating. Zach Novak will start from pole position and to be joined on the front row by the number 26 of Derek Heitman. Jacob Bradley and Sean Conklin will make up row number 2. They start in 3rd and 4th position, with John Forbes Jr. and Quentin Warman from Hayek Motorsports in P6.
Moving back into P7's Patrick Gitter with Chris Wilth on his outside in P8. P9 is Noah Bitts with Aaron Vasquez in P10. In the 11th and 12th, Matt Diacani and Cabe McClinney round out your top 12.
Lucky number 13 tonight goes to Kyle Brummett with Jonathan Evans alongside in 14th. Thomas Lloyd starting 15th position. He'll be next to Matthew Boniface in the number 16 spot. Brian Mercurio will be starting as the highest rated driver based on iRating, P17 on the grid. And another driver from the eNASCAR ranks, it's the FGRXL iRacing entry of Seth the Merchant.
Back in 19th, Sebastian Marin with Robert Malcheza III back in P20. And then Nicholas Vroman and Christopher Pfeffer, the New England native, will be 22nd. 23rd, Daniel Falkingham with Talon Smith on his outside.
And Michael P. Frisch will be in the number 25 spot alongside another one of the eNASCAR rookies from the year in Christopher Hill. Another eNASCAR rookie, Connor Urashak, starts 27th with Clayton Hoffman rolling from 28th. And then Blaze Crawford and Joseph will round out row number 15.
Michael Romandis and Adam Blocker, 31st and 32nd. John M. Hall, 33rd, with Jack M. Mace in 34th. 35th, 36th is James Holzert and Jacob Osser. And then the very last car on the grid is Hamilton Akabuezi.
Let's look top to bottom at your iRacing starting grid. 37 cars strong. To me, very telling, Derek, that of those drivers, only the top 16 actually wanted to take a time in qualifying. Maybe showing their hand early is the fact that I think a lot of this field, well, yes, it is the top split, and yes, they want to be a top split iRacing Daytona 500 champion. They know part of these deals is surviving what's going to be the next 3 to 4 hours of racing and being there at the end and being in contention. Of course, you know this place very well. It feels like February every year when we head to the Daytona International Speedway. But we'll give it the tail of the tape, Derek, just for the sake of it. 200 laps around this 2.5 mile speedway will make up tonight's 500 miles of racing.
Yeah, beautiful track. I think it's 3,800 yards down the front straight and about 3,000 on the back. Of course, banking all around this place in some form, just varying degrees. And of course, through the corners, very, very big banking. You see an example of it here. You'll see some through the tri-oval and a pit window right around about 40 laps under green.
If this race could play out under green, it would mean at least 4 trips down to the pit lane for service. But again, you don't often get through races like this without a bit of chaos. That is what some of the drivers who did not qualify are worried about. We're happy that you're spending your Friday night with us. If you got trucks up on one screen and us on the other, you're ready to strap in 500 miles in Daytona coming at you. Zach Novak in control of the field. This is the iRacing Daytona 500. In the book, a cool 497 and a half to go, and it was Derek Heitman who started on the outside of row number 1, who leads at the start-finish line. Pole sitter Zach Novak fell all the way to P7 as there was a lot of single file in the first dozen.
Yeah, look at this. I was surprised how fast everyone got down single file, got in lane. Everyone seems content to ride, at least for the moment, Evan. So maybe that's the surprise for me, just to kind of see that calm, cool nature happening at Daytona. But if you and I know Daytona, which we do, it may not last for too long.
You got to go all the way back in line till you find the 6 and Friends. Nick Vroman and others way back there in the middle 20s is where that outside lane is. Everybody else single file. This is the look off of the back of race leader Derek Heitman. Sean M. Conklin, the driver, scored in second right now. Quentin Warman, Chris Wilhite, Aaron Vasquez, your top 5. There's an onboard peak with the driver who started on the pole. That Channel 199 sim racing entry of Zach Novak. Started from that top position, but on the drop of the green flag, the outside got a much better start, and Zach never really moved. He just held his line on the bottom. 6 cars just made it around him on the outside lane.
Yeah, they really did. Got a great coordinated start almost, and we're able to pass by Zach here. So he's got his open spot in line and seems content, honestly, Evan. Maybe he's happy being back here, already thinking the long game, already thinking about fuel saving and just kind of riding along, because he made no challenge to get that spot back. He's made no challenge to make a pass here, no challenge to get out of the line. I mean, look at that. That's a big, massive line. That's got to be, probably 10, 15 cars deep of single file racing in this front pack.
It is a small gap between 14th and 15th spot. You see that gap middle of the screen right there, and then you get to the P15 runner. That's the 16 machine, John Forbes Jr. I would not classify this, though, as 2 packs, as at 3 is Set the Merchant, got a little bit loose off of the corner, and at 5 of Robert Malexa almost got underneath him. But for all intents and purposes, 1 large pack. They're still within the wake of the leaders. They could draft up there if they wanted to work a little bit better together. But this second pack, plenty of side-by-side action. And in fact, maybe even more cars on the outside than on the bottom in parts of this pack, is some strength in numbers and maybe some momentum starting to form on the outside for the first time in this race as they head down the Daytona Superstretch.
And that top lane, I think, is going to do better in the moment, because right now they don't have that many cars on line. That means less cars to kind of help create checkups. You saw a big move by the 4 in that Lowe's machine getting down to the bottom lane. But that top lane, if they can get hooked up a couple good pushes, they'll surprise you how far they'll come up the field, because the less checkups in that group, less people kind of messing with the draft, messing with the line, they won't get to the front most likely, but they'll put in a good battle in this herd.
And now that they've caught the lead pack, or that lead half of it, does anybody else want to join the party? It's Nicholas Vroman, pushed by the 15 of Christopher M. Hill. They lead the outside. A couple of cars to the rear, jumping up in line and joining them. But do you see anybody 5th or 6th in line on the inside? They know that line's coming. Those cars on the outside go at about 3 to 4 miles an hour faster than the drivers underneath them. Will anybody jump up and try to take that momentum away and use it to their own benefit? So far, the answer is no. It's just Vroman, pushed by Hill, and in tow, the number 18 of Hoffman. Behind them, the 21 of Joseph.
Yeah, right now these 4 cars, to me, that is the ideal perfect number in iRacing for what we've seen over time. 4 cars, hold on, big wreck. You see the smoke, and oh my gosh, big one here, no caution.
That was the 11 of Aaron Vasquez. Somehow still no caution flag. And now the yellow flag will finally fly after about, good 15 seconds or so after the wreck started in the corner. And it all started around that 11 machine of Aaron Vasquez. We were watching live a little bit behind that, but Vasquez was 5th in line. And just based on some of the radio chatter, I think Sean Conklin is going to be what kicks all of this off. I'm hearing, Derek, that the 8 car, who was scored in second last time by the start-finish line, might have lost the engine, and that may have caused this. Let's watch.
Let's take a look at the watch. Ooh, car moves up pretty quickly. Oh, boy, and there's that big smoke behind him. That's what, I don't know if he lost the engine, because typically we would see a big, a dark gray puff of smoke if he did lose that motor, but I mean, the moment he moved up, it just all kind of kicked off, didn't it? Everyone just kind of got moved around and nervous, and I don't know what happened from there. But yeah, he quickly moved up. You might be right, he might have lost the engine, but I'm surprised we didn't see. Hold on, let's listen. Oh, yeah, you're right. That's a great call. You heard that crashing sound. That's the motor giving way. That means he was pushing too hard for too long, and those temps got to a level that the car just couldn't handle.
And it obviously caught him off guard because sometimes you'll see a driver make very obvious moves to the outside lane, try to get some clean and cool air to the front of that car. He did not seem to have any idea that he was in any distress. That thing just went on him. And it involves maybe a half dozen other race cars in a really bizarre accident. Well, race leaders coming down pit road, only 8 laps into this thing. We talked about fuel numbers pretty tight on a 40-lap estimated fuel run to be able to go 40, 80, 120, 160, and all the way to the end on 4 stops. This pit stop here will make all of those stints a little bit shorter, and everybody seemingly has the same idea because this is every single car, a splash of fuel and out, and the first car in, Derek Heitman, is the first car out.
Well, and also, Evan, what comes to mind for me is you think about risk versus reward when you make pit stop calls. And what I think about right now is with that big wreck happening behind you as a leader, you know, how many spots could you realistically lose here in this pit stop, right? It's not as if you're going to go from 1st to 37th. We don't really have a count yet. We'll be a minute before we have a count on all the cars involved. But you're not going to lose as much if things were, you know, a worst case scenario. So why not make the stop here? Why not put the gas in the car and have some extra comfort when it comes to fuel mileage?
And I was going to kind of think out loud. My only concern would be not having other drivers pit and you getting shuffled back. But again, everybody did it. Right. There's that puff of smoke. You see it up the road when the engine went on the 8 machine at Conklin. And then again, there's no yellow at all here. Cars spinning. People are checking up. There's still no yellow. Still no yellow. And as Kyle Brummett kind of drives through it, at this point, I think the caution's still not out. And then eventually it gets thrown behind as kind of that residual eventual checkup and accordion effect finally got a car to spin completely around. I think no doubt if the yellow had come out immediately, maybe less drivers would have been involved in that one, Derek. That yellow took so long, I suspect some drivers slowed for the wreck, saw there wasn't a yellow, started accelerating through the wreck again, all before the yellow flag was actually displayed. And again, that's not a judgment call. If you're unaware of how that system works on the sim, that's all completely handled automatically by the race session.
And the challenge for that as a driver is that the what ifs in your head, right? Because what if it never comes out? What if the system determines it doesn't need to put the caution out and you check up and now all of a sudden you find yourself 10, 15, 20 seconds back behind the lead pack because you lifted for a wreck that you were positive was going to be a yellow flag that never came out. As iRacers, we've all been in that situation before, right? And it eats you alive. You know, it frustrates you. It gets in your head because then you're thinking to yourself, well, unless we wreck again, you know, we're never going to catch up. And so you kind of just push until that yellow flag comes out, and sometimes to your own detriment.
So after that incident, it's going to take a couple of drivers out of this race early, or at least out of contention. Obviously, Conklin is down pit road and still in the box. I believe the sim still lets you get a engine replaced. Is it still like a 45-minute timer, Derek? Have you had to deal with that in any of your long ones?
That's a great question, because in this season's update, the NASCAR model across all 3, Cup, Xfinity, and Trucks, has adopted a model that's been known on the IndyCar side of iRacing for a while, where you might get that option to repair the engine, or now you can be told, hey, listen, it's too much damage, just go on home. You're done for the day. And so there's no exact, listing from iRacing about what is and isn't under that criteria. So I've seen some pretty big repairs this week, and I've seen some repairs that I thought were pretty minor where people just got sent home. So my guess for the blown motor is that that's probably going to be a you're just done for the day. Even if you're not, that's a 40-minute repair, and for most of these guys, that will make them want to end their day anyways.
Yeah, if we're talking about a league race, maybe there's some incentive, right, to be able to get back out there, score some points. If this was the real Daytona 500 and you're talking about a $33 million purse, right, maybe some incentive to get out there and get a spot in the 20s or the 30s. I think even if Conklin could get it fixed, maybe not much of an incentive to get back onto the racetrack. He'll fall off the lead lap. The other 35 and the 36 other cars still on the lead lap as the green flag flies, and we're back underway. Good restart for Derek Heitman. Is it going to be too good of a restart, though? Noah Bitts goes high to low. He's fourth in line, and Heitman sees the runs coming. He'll go to the outside.
Yeah, Heitman did a great job managing that to make sure the run didn't get run up on him and run him over. So Great job up there in that black and green machine by Heitman to manage that run as we see him come around the outside, already looking 3 wide. That didn't take long, but there's a car moving all the way to the bottom. So, boy, no one's any more calm after the first wreck. In fact, we might be a bit more aggressive here in the second run.
You can see a big gap opens up between the first 3 cars inside and out. That's not going to last forever, but at least the trio on the outside wants to clear the inside lane, and they do. So Heitman, Warman, and Gitter with a 3-car trio draft locked together, trying to open things up at the front of the field. They've already pulled about a half a second clear. Chris Wilhite 4th on back. Now again, they're going to have to lay off those temperatures, as we saw with the 8-car Conklin. Going to be something to worry about here during an afternoon session at Daytona. So the 7 is backed off, and you can see all these cars here now 3 wide are going to start building up some speed, and we'll catch those leaders eventually. There's 2 cars on the very outside. That's Connor Euroshak and the 20 of Blaze Crawford.
Yeah, 2 iRacing Coca-Cola Series drivers who are going to link up here so they can make their way towards the forward here and see what they can make happen. Is now, the 17 left the 20 behind. And we'll see how that plays out. The 20 might remember that later, Evan, when it comes around.
It is a long R&D session. When you have the iRatings, though, that these drivers do to be in a split that has an average iRating of over 7,000, you're probably not running into many drivers that you've never met before, right? So most of these special events, we're talking about getting familiar with the cars around you, and there's just still some of that to a degree, but you're right. This is an opportunity for drivers to work together, and maybe an opportunity for you to make an enemy who is going to decide, all right, in 180 laps from now, I'm not going to work with you. That's all part of the gamesmanship that is super speedway racing. Look at the difference in speed there. The inside line in this picture way faster, and dropping it back in the middle is the pick number 13 of Talon Smith, and the 11 behind him of Aaron Vasquez. They get passed by every car on the outside lane, and will eventually try to find a spot in line. That puts them way back into 31st.
Yeah, Talon got stuck in what we typically refer to, Evan, as the sucker hole. That means he got stuck in the middle. No one in front of him drafting, no one behind him drafting, and he just sunk like a rock down the middle, and eventually got himself to the outside. He'll try to pull himself back in line. But the story right now, look at this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cars have just gotten in line and left the rest of the field. Look at that humongous gap. That is, 3 seconds almost of a gap that they did this by staying in line, not going double file, not going triple file, and they're just content. Now that field in the back can catch them. They're a bigger line. If they stay on the line, stay in line, and stay down on the yellow line and keep running, they will catch back up. But any movement, anyone who wants to pull out a line, anyone who wants to race, anyone who wants to check up the field, and they'll kill that progress.
And that's why the leaders, I think, were able to pull away, because we saw all sorts of 2 and 3 wide back here. That was obviously making every single trip around the racetrack for this secondary pack that much slower. Now, because the race leaders have single filed out in this secondary group has, it'll be interesting to watch the stopwatches. Heitman is the lead car up front. His lap time this time by 45.787. What's going to be the lap time for the 29 of Broom at a 9.79. So that time by, this secondary pack still slower, and this kind of move to the outside, maybe partially because of it. But I think this might be Euroshak, Crawford, and company. I think they want to lead this group. They may not have as much faith in the collective, and they may want to just do this on their own. They said, you guys can figure that out. We want to go.
Well, the other thing that may have happened as well, I was beginning to wonder, we saw a lot of cars wrapped up in that first incident. Maybe they're not done for the day. Maybe they're not badly damaged. But any kind of damage at Daytona to your body, to the front or back into your car, will mess with your top speed. And if you get someone leading a draft who's a damaged car, it hurts. That's a nice way of saying it. It hurts really bad, because they just never catch up. They don't ever get up to speed, and you don't realize it for a couple of laps. And by that point, you're just like an eternity away from the lead pack.
So this first restart of the race presenting a unique opportunity for this field to get a little bit spread out and drivers to be strategic about it. Now you got 3 groups. Lead pack on the top of your screen. That is 1st through 7th. The secondary pack that kind of splintered off of what was the big second group, they are on the bottom. They are running 8th 9th, 10th, and 11th. And then Thomas Lloyd kicks off the third group from 12th position on back. Again, there is more speed in one large pack. And in fact, this last time around, that big third group was faster, Derek, than the Urashak-led group before, which is funny because it was just the opposite a few laps ago. If they stay in line, work together, it's not just going to magically happen for you, right? I think those top two cars really still need to be coordinated quite well, but it's going to make your life a lot easier, and we'll see if the lead cars in that third group, that being Thomas Lloyd and Jack Mace, have the coordination to do so. Watching it, seems like they're doing everything correctly. That 27's pushing, is getting the nose to the outside to cool it off a little bit in the center of the corner, and that's what you want out of the two cars that are leading your group.
Yeah, it seems that pack has found a good pusher and a good leader. And those are two skills that oftentimes are understated, both in real-life racing and in sim racing. Not everyone's a great pusher. Not everyone's a great pushee. Sometimes you're good at one, sometimes you're good at both. And if you're not a good pusher, it's very, very detrimental to yourself and everyone behind you, and vice versa. If you're not comfortable having someone just ride your back end and bumping and moving you around a little bit, it'll hurt that field. So at least for right now, it does appear as though these guys have gotten it together. And man, I got nervous, Evan, because I saw on that last camera shot a little bit of pushing the pusher. It looked like Jack Mace was being pushed himself, and that will be bad news for this field if that continues to happen.
Yeah, that is a bit of a dangerous position to be in, because that's how you get cars getting spit out of line, and that's how you get a big accident. Look at the 14 car there. That's the white-nosed Chevrolet. I don't think that was a designed move there by Michael P. Frisch. It looked like he may have just gotten shuffled out of line as there was a bit of a checkup coming into the tri-oval. He got hit from behind. Next thing you know, you're dropping backwards. Frisch very fortunate to find a spot in line in front of that number 25 of John Hall, who may have given him a little bit of a break. He's able to get down in line, only ends up losing a couple of spots. If that hole was not there, you could have been looking at Frisch losing a dozen or more, because everybody behind him in this conglomerate still running single file, which is what you would want them to be doing if they want to try to catch up to those race leaders. The gap's pretty stable at the moment, and now that Urashak group, who is only a 1 second up the road, continues to lose a little bit of time compared to the group behind them.
And, you know, it's interesting because that group where Frisch is, John Hall and others, that's the group in the iRacing voice chatter that is making the noise. They seem to all be confused about why they're not linked together better, why they keep saying, why is this happening to us? Why are people pulling out? Why is this happening? It's like they just can't quite get it together. And so there's a little bit of frustration in the voice chat from that group of cars. Just they want to get linked up. They want to make it work, and they're just not doing a very good job of it. Up top there, that's the 24. That's Adam Blocker with James Holzer in the back. Holzer, one of the vocal ones. I think he wants to see if he can get and lead this group himself, but oh my gosh, they're still moving around. We are racing hard for the back of the race.
And you can see the drivers on the radio, that open driver channel that you were describing, a little bit confused and perplexed as to why this is what's going on at this point in this race. But nonetheless, that's how these drivers have opted to race, so that's how they're going to go after it. This is the fourth pack. This is behind the group with, Lloyd and Mace and Peffer that we've been talking about. This is 7+ seconds off, and this might be a little bit of frustration, too, for the cars up top, right? That's Jacob Oster leading the group. That number 24 of Adam Blocker pushing him. That 28 of James Holzer is in line as well. They might get frustrated. Hey, if we're not going anywhere, let's just do this thing on our own. And I think that might be a little bit of what we're seeing there currently. But all kinds of different cars spread out in this field. I would not have had my money on that 10 of Daniel Falkenham, who you just got to look at being 31st and 11 seconds off of the race lead. Again, that's not really going to matter if they can keep up pace, but at the very, very slim chance this race goes green, 12 seconds off of the race leader, not where I would want to be, but they're certainly in a safe, conservative position.
Yeah, and that pack at the back where you saw Falkenham, that's the pack that I think has got their race figured out. At least they know what the goal is. Their goal is to sit back and ride. That's what they want to do. They want to wait for a wreck, maybe another wreck, since we had our first one, and kind of slowly work their way forward. They don't want to be involved in what they think is about to happen. that pack ahead of them, I thought that was their goal. But apparently it was not. As you're watching live racing, at the bottom of your screen is the race for the lead, or at least the lead cars moving around, being led by Heitman. And then top of your screen is the pack in the back that is just riding around as well. So two different forms of riding, just for very different positions, Evan.
And if you're not keeping tabs, we promise we won't make it a quiz. But yeah, this field is split off into 4 or 5 different groups, all chasing down these leaders. Derek Heitman has settled in quite comfortably, and in a Daytona rarity, has led 24 of the 24 laps that have been completed thus far. I don't know if I've ever seen a driver lead 24 straight laps in a 40-car race here.
Yeah, at least not in the sim form, right? It's just people want to lead typically in these iRacing events. You want to get up there, you want to lead, because the belief is, whether it's right or wrong, and we've both seen it work and not work, the belief is the front is the safest place. The front is the place where you're ideally safest from whatever calamity or chaos or menace-like behavior that could happen in this race. But you and I have both seen the leader is not always safe when those things break out. So we'll wait to see here. But yeah, I'm surprised. I agree with you. I mean, here we are starting lap 26, and Heitman, I'm pretty sure, has lit every one of them. I'm a little surprised no one's tried to make the move, and I'm surprised Heitman wants to lead all of them. I know he went down on lap 8 or so and put gas in his car, but by being the front car, Evan, he's burning more gas. He has no one to draft on, no one to sit behind and save. And so I'm surprised at some point if he doesn't say, hey, listen, let me pull back to the back of this, 6-car field and save some gas.
Yeah, it's not uncommon, to your point, that we would see in a coordinated group effort like this, as there's a bit of a stack up there. The 31 of Will Height's got to check up from 4th in line, but you'll see maybe the leader go out there, lead 5 laps or so, and then actually either pull a swap with the second car in line or just drop to the back of this group, because then they can enjoy the benefits of all the fuel saving. Because as Derek Heitman leads this pack, he is 100% throttle 100% of the time. If you're the last car in this group, that's 7 to Matthew Boniface, you're looking at maybe 50% throttle at many points around this racetrack, but you got the benefit of drafting off of the 6 cars in front of you, and of course could skew your fuel number. Now, the fuel numbers were close enough to being about picture perfect for a 4-stopper when this race started. There is a bit of a buffer with that caution flag that happened early and everybody coming down pit road at lap number 8. I don't know if any amount of fuel saving, Derek, with a 40-lap run at Daytona is going to knock a whole pit stop out of this. So maybe that's why Heitman doesn't seem to be too concerned with the fuel strategy right now. But nonetheless, again, he's been up front and has led every single lap thus far. I've seen drivers lead maybe 20, 30 in a row in that middle portion of the race where things really start to calm down a little bit. But I don't think I've ever seen that off of the jump, just based on happenstance and restarts and positions. It's just a statistical abnormality. As you can see, Quinton Mormon doing his job as the number 2 car in line, pushing on the straightaways, giving a bit of space in the corner, and then as they head down the short chute here, he'll get right back on the bumper.
And so let's come back to the point you made earlier about how the way you behave in this race right now and the way you ride, the way you drive, matters later. Obviously, what you and I can take down as a note is 2 things. That obviously Heitman is happy with Warman as a pusher, and Warman is happy with Heitman as someone to push. This may come back into play later, because at the end of the race, if you're looking for someone to team up with, ideally, you want to team up with someone that you trust, someone you know rides well, someone who's having a good, stable race, someone that has proven to you that they're not going to do something detrimental to you. And right now, those 2 guys seem very, very happy, because if Warman wasn't happy pushing Heitman around, he would have done something about it. He would have tried to get a coordinated effort in order to try to get to the outside and make that happen. Here's on board from Patrick Gitter, the Carolina native, here in the 7-car, Evan. And you see, he to me has the most important job, because he has to be very, very aware of his surrounding. There's a phrase we use called "don't push the pusher." That means the last thing you and I, or anyone in this field, wants the 7 to do is get up here and start bumping the 2. And he'll do it a little bit, but if he bumps the 2 and the 2 gets up into the leader, what'll happen is he'll end up kind of lifting the 2's back end off the ground, and he'll spin the 2 around, and that will be very, very detrimental to the 7's race, more than likely.
And that's why it is so difficult, despite the fact that if you look at it from a, wide shot from the blimp or whatever, it looks super easy. But on board there, look at all that movement there. It is not easy to just ride around. So even those moments that may not be exciting, where there's strategy like this playing a factor, it still takes a lot of focus and concentration for the drivers. A racetrack like this, maybe not as much of a physical demand as, an endurance road race on the surface, but certainly from a mental demand, you have to be locked in 110% of the time, because to your point, if you get a small stack up like that, or if you're that too warm and you get jacked up on the back by Patrick Gitter, if that 7 just kind of doesn't pay attention for a split second, you could miss something like this. Slow lap car on the bottom that the leaders will have to go high and serpentine around, or you could miss a checkup, and all it takes is that momentary lapse in concentration that would end your hopes at winning a crown jewel on the special events calendar.
Well, I'm surprised what we're seeing here, by the way, is that lap car must be really off pace, Evan, because typically if you're a lap car and you ride the bottom of the track and you make the leaders kind of serpentine up and back down in line, they should have sucked that lap car into the draft. They should have really pulled him into the draft just by nature of how the draft works. The fact that they got all the way around here from that car, which is the 18, that is Clayton Huffman, tells me he's way off pace. I mean, we'll see if he gets in line here behind all these cars, but he should have been sucked into that first draft.
Yeah, that's the kind of best case scenario here. If you could get absorbed into the pack, and maybe that was partially why we saw that 18 Michino Hoffman stay low, right? It's certainly a bit more of an instigator position, but it does give you a better chance. Now, I think the damage on the 18 is going to prevent him from getting picked up maybe by any of these groups. But he is the first car lap down. He is running ahead of Michael Romanidis. Those are the only two cars one lap down. They're scored in 34th and 35th position. Hoffman's halfway down the backstretch, going to get passed by another set of lead lap cars. Romanidis is on the front stretch. So there's a half a lap benefit in favor of Hoffman. But again, I'm not sure how realistic it is if Clayton Hoffman's going to get back in this race just based on the damage. That quick glimpse of Romanidis told me, though, that, Derek, I don't see as much damage on Romanidis' car as they do on Hoffman's. So if I'm Michael in this scenario, I need to get that lucky dog spot from him ASAP, because I might have a chance to win this race if I can get back onto the lead lap. I don't know if the same can be said about the 18.
Yeah, we'll see how much more damage the 18 can get fixed on pit road if or when that opportunity presents. But here's another great bump from the 2 to the 26. You see it almost all the way down the back straight here, and a great run is happening. I saw some comments in chat, Evan, where people maybe are comparing the lines we're running right now and the way this race is moving along to almost like pre-restrictor plate racing, and the fact that we're just sort of in line and we're not really moving. I don't see it that way. I see this as more of everyone's just being patient. Everyone here realizes this is 200 laps. We're only on lap 34 or beginning 34. I want to be here at the end of this race. That's how you win a race like this, is by being there, being conservative, and picking your spots. I think as this race goes on, maybe one or two well-placed cautions, and this will be a hornet's nest that you're used to seeing.
And if it wasn't for that blown engine and the wreck that was caused immediately afterwards for Sean Conklin, then maybe you're looking at a more atypical opening stint of this iRacing Daytona 500, where you get some side-by-side, maybe some 3-wide, but drivers would tend to be scared away from doing that this early on. And then normally it's the first green flag pit cycle, Derek, that splits us up like this, right? And you normally got 20-something cars in it. You come down a pit, maybe divide it by 2. And every time we get through a green flag pit stop, the field gets more and more separated. I would not have placed my money on it being a restart that was going to be the reason this field was going to split up. Those are typically reasons why everybody groups together. But again, it was an aggressive charge to the front by the Heitman, Warman, and Gitter trio, and then kind of the dominoes that fell in where all those other packs kind of fought with each other for too long that put us in this spot. Now, the group you're looking at right here is the second group in line. Seth the Merchant, you're on board with him in the FGRXL iRacing machine. He's pushing the 9 of Christopher Peffer. These cars have been faster than the leaders the last couple of times by. So this pack 8th through 16th has more cars than the leaders and are just as well coordinated. That last time by, another 0.3 of a second gets taken out of that advantage. So very shortly here, we'll be seeing this second group catch the leaders and potentially give us a 14-car lead pack.
The question is, will they catch them here in time? Because you got to think we're about, 10 laps-ish away from our first set of green flag pit stops. So maybe by the time they catch them, it might be just about time for them to come down pit road and sort of cycle us all back out again. So we'll see how that goes. But you're right, that camera shot's getting closer and closer. But look at it up front. You're seeing a little bit of two-wide racing up there. So as cars move around up there and cars fall off the pack, and there may be lapped cars that we're not getting around, those lapped cars will provide a little bit of a buffer and a little bit more draft between the two lines, and that will help the second pack.
Yeah, it's going to give them a small advantage, and they just need to keep it together. The last couple of cars in that second pack have been dropping it back and struggling to maintain contact. You'll see this is going to hurt them a little bit. Back straightaway, better than this happening in the corner, but it is going to affect the corner entry just a bit for this line as they work around lap traffic there. That put Michael Romanidis a second lap down, a blow for him in the battle for the lucky dog position. He has made up time on Hoffman, who's the car ahead of him, but again, dropping 2 laps down, going to hurt him in that fight. And to no surprise, the secondary pack was still faster than the leaders last lap, but not by the same margin that they had been the last few times. So it did cost them a little bit of time. They've got to get coordinated to back up, but I think if they have the time to do it, and again, they've got the strength of numbers, there's not much you can do as the lead pack other than just watch those intervals tick away.
Yeah, and that is the frustrating part. Something I've noted here, by the way, that's our second time where we're seeing a lapped car, by the way, who's sticking to the bottom of the track. That is not typically what a driver on the lead lap prefers. It stuck out to me both times. We've seen it now. Typically, if you're the leader, you want those lapped cars to go high and kind of get out of your way and not make you serpentine that track and not make you make that line wiggle. But it really stuck out to me both times with the 23 and then the car before that they're sticking to the bottom here. And that's okay. You don't have to move up top. There's no rule that says you have to. I think it's just sort of maybe an unspoken driver's etiquette that you move to the top, but just something to note for later about predictability. That's what's important when passing traffic is predictability. So now that's what the leaders are going to be expecting all race long.
And again, where that happens in the corner, just as critical as where that car is on the racetrack. But this is a good look here at the lead pack and the secondary pack. And with every foot that they close in, that lead car of pack number 2, Christopher Pfeffer, going to get more and more draft off of the cars in front. You go on board with his number 9 machine. His last lap time, a 45.310. That's compared to a 7.46 for the race leader. So nearly a half a second better. At that rate, they'll be there maybe in a lap and a half.
Right. And at some point, it's going to become a better run because when he gets within about a second of that pack in front of him, that 9 car up front will begin to pull a small draft off of the leaders. And then he'll get even more speed, more acceleration, and be able to catch that run a little bit faster than what he's doing currently. But man, kudos to this group here. This is Pfeffer, DeMerchant, Christopher Hill. I think Michael Frisch might be in that group. They're doing a great job at being patient and catching him back up with this group. At one point, it seemed almost kind of not hopeless, but it seemed like a couple eons away that they could catch them in his first run. But here we are. There's Michael P. Frisch right in this group. And, Evan, we looked at that special event calendar earlier. We see the Firecracker 400 will be here in July for that event. When I think of 87s, NASCAR 87s and iRacing, Michael P. Frisch comes to mind. It's the first guy I think of who must have been stoked when that event got announced.
Well, and that one is, being a special event on the iRacing calendar. We've also seen it as a big private event as well on the iRacing service. So if you're a Floridian like Michael and you enjoy super speedway racing, I think you'll take any crack you can get and come in here to the World Center of Racing. And that's why I think this Friday night split, again, I mentioned off at the top that, if you got trucks on one screen and us on the other, we're happy to be part of your racing Friday night. But I think this is going to be one of the busier top split thoughts on the weekend, because a lot of people over the course of the next 2 days, if they're not already in Daytona, going to be headed out to the Speedway into Daytona Beach for the race. That includes, obviously, a lot of the Floridians maybe in this session as well. So top-level talent, more than 6 drivers for the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series in this race. We've got former top split Daytona winners, and there's another Floridian in Matthew Boniface, who's the last car of that lead group of 7 that have been really uncontested for much of this race, but they are now officially going to be caught from the 9 car and back. And now the decision for Pfeffer is, do you want to be an instigator? Do you use this momentum and go to the outside? Or are you enjoying the fact that you guys have been logging laps and stay in line? We're about 35 laps removed from the last time these cars pitted, which means that green flag service is not that far away.
Which means to me you want to stay on the bottom, by the way, is the answer to that question for me, because you can't pit from the top lane, right? Or if you do, you just got to be coordinated with both lanes. So to me, if I'm that close to pit stops happening, I just want to be on the bottom lane and be there so I can get down to pit road easily. But not for Pfeffer, apparently. He's moved up to the top and now going to try to make a run at it. He's got 3 other cars behind him who are pushing. But boy, they're moving around a lot in that draft, and that's a little scary. That's the 15 up there. I think that's Seth the Merchant up there. Whew.
3 wide, middle of all of that is going to be the Dyna Machine of Pfeffer, and he was a bit hesitant to go to the outside. The 5 was even more aggressive to make that move to the outside, and the instigator in the end was the 3, Seth the Merchant, who went up top. But again, if they had done that at once and as a group, I think that might have been able to work, but that kind of half-stepped approach wasn't going to cut it, and they'll have to drop back in line, try to get grouped back up together and try this one again. Lead pack now 13 cars strong, and they've got a 13-second advantage over the second pack on back. You see it on your scoring pylon. Connor Euroshak in 14th spot, now 15 seconds off of the race leaders. I'm sure this lead group would love now a race that can go green for a long distance.
Well, now we come up to about the point of the race, which I think is the most intriguing part of any iRacing event, top split or what have you, is green flag pit stops. Who practices these and doesn't practice them will mean a big difference. You can gain and lose a lot of time on pit road here. Now, this, of course, as you said, includes 6, or at least we started with 6 Coca-Cola iRacing Series drivers. So we know that some of this field has practiced them, but if you do not practice how to use every inch, every millimeter of that pit entry lane at speed, you will get past pretty easily here. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. Again, we're probably not that far from it, I would suspect, when we'll see that happen, because I think everyone's being credited as pitting on lap 9. We're now working lap 47, so that's about 38 laps in. We'll wait and see when people start pitting.
And right as you say that, some drivers over the radio saying a couple more laps here. So we know the math, we know they're close. And again, what that early yellow in the pit cycle did is give drivers a little bit more of a buffer. But clearly, Seth the Merchant is not going to be coming down the pit road the next time by, because he's making a move to the outside with the bumping help of the 15 machine of Christopher Hill. It's just those 2 for now. Is the 1 car going to go with them? Brian Mercurio, a little bit non-committal. He'll go to the outside. So does Matthew Boniface. So it's going to be 7 cars on the bottom, 4 on the outside line. And those pushers for DeMerchant just could not get it sorted. They pull the parachute cord, they tuck in line, and DeMerchant all on his own up top. You see Christopher Hill there dragging the brakes, though, to give that 3 a place to pull in line.
Nice job there by everybody involved. DeMerchant's back in line, and will now be right here behind the field, sitting here in line. So nothing really lost for DeMerchant. Maybe a learning opportunity to say, hey, that didn't work the way I wanted to. Now I know something for later. I call them live science experiments, because you get to learn what does and doesn't work in a certain scenario here at this track, or at any track, when you make moves like that early in a race.
That's what this time is for, is figuring out those moves. And again, these drivers are pros. They may have already raced in a Coke Series race here earlier this year. This could already be their second or third top split 500 of the week. But clearly, these two here want to make something happen. So DeMerchant and Hill to the outside again, as below them, the inside line will entirely evaporate and come to pit road. 60 miles an hour pit speed as Heitman, Warman, Gitter, Wilhite, Bitts, Vroman, and Lloyd are all in.
Yep, and everyone's good. No speeding penalties so far down pit road. Per race control, now being told Holzer and others will come down next time by. So this is going to continue to be a busy pit road for probably 3 or 4 laps as the cycle goes through. Now watch that front car, only right side tire. No, we took 4. Typically, drivers here, Evan, only take 2 tires per pit stop, but that lead car has went ahead and taken 4, and off they go.
So they're off and away, and those drivers coordinating right now on the radio, trying to make sure they can get out together so they can draft as a group immediately. The exit may be more important than the pit road entry here in Daytona. Lead group and DeMerchant and company do not pit that time. They stay out on the racetrack. And you can see it costs you about 6/8 of a lap or so to be able to get pitted here. Those leaders, bottom of your screen, coming off of turn number 2, and that group of cars who pitted about 3/4 of the way down the super stretch. So they will not lose a lap at any point pitting because they were obviously alongside the leaders. Now, if you're that secondary or third group that's in now, the Vasquez, the Brummets, the Evans, the Marins, and so on and so forth, because you were so far behind the leaders, these cars may actually lose their lead lap status if these leaders don't come in. Not going to matter. Here we go. DeMerchant brings them down.
Yep, that's what I said. That's what my thought as well, was that second pack be the one in trouble. But everyone now appears to be down pit road, maybe minus a couple stragglers. No, I think that's everyone. When these cars up front pit, this will be the full pit cycle. So we'll come back to a net race lead. We'll see who does and doesn't get groups back up together, and we'll begin. I hate to use the word segment, because I know that word in racing has been kind of, picked apart the past few years, and people like or don't like it. But another segment of this race is about to begin.
So it continues on through, and now we have gotten through our first green flag pit cycle. I mentioned earlier, this is kind of the point in this race where we expect the field to get split up for the first time. Will it serve to split things up any further? We had just gotten the lead pack reunified before the green flag pit cycle began. Can this 3-car group that you are watching on the apron, can they get up to speed quick enough? Because there are cars at pace coming behind them, and Seth DeMerchant's going to have to look out the window as the 2 of Quinton Warman going to blow past at about a 15-mile-an-hour difference. No doubt about it that the first group of cars who pitted are going to be the cars who cycle through to the lead, and it'll be Warman, Wilhite, and Gitter. 1, 2, 3. Heitman as well, part of this pack, make it 4 that get ahead of Seth DeMerchant.
Yeah, we noticed when those cars are coming off pit road, I noticed that Heitman came up last of those 4 cars. So he came in first. He gave up a little bit of time on pit road. So he's still up there, still running 4th, still very much in contention, but sort of worth noting that for the first time, outside of the pit cycle, that Derek Heitman is not leading this race.
It was a good streak while it lasted. 48 straight laps from the drop of the green flag were led by one Derek Heitman, and after the pit cycle, that will not be the case no longer. A couple of cars getting shuffled out of this. Jacob Oster's car came down pit road as part of a green flag pit cycle with damage. He has yet to lead pit road, so obviously some severe damage issues with his machine. Also, Clayton Hoffman's car has gone behind the wall. Hoffman becoming the 3rd DNF of the afternoon, alongside Zach Novak and Sean Conklin, who have also both officially retired from this race since the last time we checked in with him. And now the leaders look very similar, Derek, to what they did about 20 laps ago, just it's a role reversal. The DeMerchant and company group are the chasers once more, and they're going to try to catch up to the Warman, Wilhite, Gitter, and Heitman 4-car breakaway. Now, 4 cars in the lead group, nearly a dozen cars in the secondary group. That second pack's got a big advantage if they can stay in line here and work together. It'll take some time, but eventually they should be able to get there.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing I noticed different about this run versus the last one is that these chasers, if you want to call them that, are closer than they were starting the last run. So they'll catch up hopefully faster than they did last time, and they'll be able to get comfortable in making a race out of this. You see the gap there on the left side of your screen on the score ticker. It's about 2.4 seconds to the lead. So maybe about, let's say, 2 seconds flat to the back of that first draft. So if they can stay faster, which last time by, if we take a look, let's see, it'd be P7 on back, I believe, P5 on back. They're about even time. There's no real big difference. Maybe a tenth of a second in the first pack and the second pack.
Decent enough number for the time being. Again, we'll see how that changes as this continues on. And now you hit the reset button on the strategy once more. I think the biggest number that I saw out of anybody was about 43 laps on fuel. If you can do that consistently to the end of this race, you'd get about 130 laps out of it on 2 more stops. We are still 144 laps away from the end of this race, Derek. That's why I still think, again, even with pretty good fuel saving to hit that number, still don't know if there's any way to eliminate a stop from this. I still think we're looking at 4 pit stops under green flag conditions. As you're on board with Thomas Lloyd, and you can see this secondary group catching that breakaway of 4.
No, I totally agree. We're not going to cut a stop off this race in any way, right? That's something typically we see in longer races, maybe our endurance road races throughout the year, the Daytona 24, the Bathurst 12 this upcoming weekend, stuff like that. But what we will do is possibly cut some time off of that last pit stop, right? And tenths of a second on pit road here could matter whether you come out leading your pack or you come out 9th in your pack. And I think that is where maybe that fuel saving could come into play a little bit as this race goes on. If it does happen, if we do find ourselves in that scenario, right? Or could it be, how much gas do I have for said green-white checker if we get to that point later? That's not out of the realm of possibilities. So we'll wait and see. Here's Christopher Pfeiffer, the New England native, and that number 9 black and green machine. And he is comfortable riding here and doing a pretty good job of it here. Just sitting in line, just kind of waiting to see what will happen as this race goes on.
And it's funny, these 40-lap runs seemingly come to go so quickly. And then once you get out there, your bed's kind of made. It all comes down to the execution in and out of the pit lane on the green flag pit stops, and then kind of got to ride. Again, there's certainly a more elevated position of authority if you're the first 2 cars in any given line. I think you kind of dictate the tone of what your group is going to do. But they are on the scene. DeMerchant's group has caught the lead 4, and no hesitation this time. But they'll go to the outside. The 7 of Patrick Kidder liked what he saw. He jumps up to defend, and Quinton Warman trying to play some defense goes up as well. So the 2 car goes high, takes the draft away. Now the undercut for Kidder. That's not going to work. He gets no help. DeMerchant works with the 2 of Warman. Kidder drops back to about 5th, and new race leader in Daytona. It is the number 2 of Quinton Warman back on top. He's able to hold off for the moment that challenge for the Merchant and Company.
That's a great pass and a great use of the top lane there. You're right. Kidder really thought more people was going to come down with him, and he jumped down way too early, it appears. And he's leading that bottom lane as they're trying to come around. But look at this from the back end of Quinton Warman. This is Seth DeMerchant just pushing all the way around the track, through the corners, through the front straight, through the tri-oval. I mean, Seth DeMerchant is just riding that back bumper.
And now he's going to leave him. DeMerchant steps to the line to the inside. Everybody's going to follow the 3. And just as quickly as it looked like Warman had fended off the challenge with a block to the outside, everybody goes low with him. Warman's going to find a spot in line. It's not till P8 in line on the inside. And Seth DeMerchant now back to the race lead. That's the 2nd time he has led a group of cars out of a time deficit, chased down the race leaders, and gotten to P1. Impressive stuff.
You know, when I see that move like that, Evan, and I see everyone follow Seth DeMerchant, what comes to my mind is this is all obviously top split racing. This is very all highly talented drivers. But I wonder if everyone there went, hey, that's the pro. That's the guy, what we call the black license in iRacing, the pro level license. Let me follow that guy. He must know what he's doing. He's the expert. And I just wonder if that's what caused that sort of follow the leader mentality with Seth DeMerchant.
Just listening in to some of the driver chatter as well, trying to pick up on some of the discussions amongst these cars. You're on board with Brian Mercurio there. I think Michael Frisch maybe have wanted a bit of a move to the outside. He wasn't happy with something in line, but we're back to a lead pack. That's going to be 13 cars strong. 61 laps complete here in Daytona with only the one early caution flag so far. The secondary group, Connor Urashak was leading it before the pit cycle. Now he's third in line behind Blaze Crawford and John Hall. They're pretty stable back there. I think they were 15 seconds back last time we looked at them. They slipped to 17, and that's a good visual of how big that difference is. That's your race leaders on the bottom of the screen. In the center of turns number 1 and 2, and then that other group is 16, 17 full seconds behind them, coming down the backstretch as your leaders are now in 3 and 4.
Yeah, and of course, the bottom of your screen has the longer line, so that was sort of dictated by default. They may have the better wrapping line. They may carry more speed through the corners. But I also noticed as I kind of look at both screens, I mean, both have some cars that are moving up and down the lanes. It's not exactly easy to hold a consistent lane all the way through the track, but I do notice that the bottom lane leader seems to be a little bit more still in how they're holding lanes. That top lane, you see a couple cars keep wanting to move up out of lane, and that breaks that draft every time. That causes checkups, and that slows your lane down.
Just doing more listening into the driver radio as a bunch of different groups kind of have some conversations about who's going to do what and when. It was just some lap traffic communicated on getting out of the way of the race leaders. You can work on these cars if you get some caution flags and have opportunities to do it, but anybody who's got a damaged car this early in a 500-mile race is going to be in for a long and annoying afternoon of racing if they want to stick this one out. And I don't know what we'll see out of this lead pack. Again, aggressive pushing up front from Mercurio and DeMerchant. DeMerchant's group kind of being the second group in line, Derek, has really been the only side-by-side racing we've seen amongst the leaders in the last 30 to 40 laps. Now that they've successfully been able to get to the lead of this group, I don't know if anybody from the other pack, the Warmans, Lloyds, the Bitzes in the middle of this group, I don't know if any of them really want to instigate. Again, I've never heard a driver tell me a story about how they won the iRacing Daytona 500 on lap number 65. Now, I've certainly heard a lot of stories about how they've lost it at this point in the race. I would not be shocked at all if these group just kind of ride right here for the next 30 laps.
Yeah, the only thing that would cause you not to want to ride here would be if this lane begins to wiggle too much, if the checkups get too big, or something happens where you think you have to go, right? I mean, but look at our two previous instances where we've had two iRacing. The first one, obviously, the blown motor that caused that big calamity on lap 8. That was a little bit too wide racing. Then you look back at on that restart right around lap 11 or 12 and went green again. That group went 3 wide and fell behind very, very, very quickly. And that's got to be in your mind of, hey, listen, they tried and they failed. And I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be back there in that group. I want to be up here ready to go. But also, I think there's a bit of just not wanting to be first, right? And what I mean by that is, listen, if you go, I'll go. That's like saying, hey, if you order first at dinner, you order, then I'll order. This way, in case you order the most expensive thing, then I don't feel bad ordering whatever, right? So most people don't want to be the first to pull out of line. They want to be the one to follow and say, hey, cool, someone else did it. Let me help them.
And this lead group has got a lot of drivers that know each other very well. So I'm sure there is some sort of a plan for some of the different strategy calls that have been made thus far. The decision to pit on the first yellow, the lap number in which to pit on the second, or the first green flag pit cycle, I should say. All these drivers, I'm sure, a lot of them in a Discord channel together, coordinating. I don't know if in a Daytona 500 like this, where there is no points, teams championship, anything like that long term on the line, aside from the NIS itself, that you'll see anybody fully commit to somebody for the whole race, and that means, loyal through lap number 200. But at least at this point, you'd like to think everyone's on the same team, although that was a little bit tight there with that 3 to Merchant pushing the 1, while that 15 car Hill got awfully close to that left rear quarter panel. You can get away with a lot in these cars. Now, this early, I'd probably recommend not pushing them a ton at all in the corners. Let the car get a yield high, but anytime you get off-centered from each other, specifically on that left rear quarter panel, it's a hold your breath moment no matter who's driving.
Yeah, that's the key to pushing here, right? Is you have to do it blatantly centered. But then the reason why you want to be up there sort of off-center to the left is that's how you get air back in this car. That's how you cool these motors down. And obviously we saw earlier, you know, from Sean Conklin, you'd have to do that. I'll admit I was surprised how fastly Conklin, you know, blew that motor. And I thought he would have needed a little bit more time to kind of be up there to raise those temps. But if I was a driver, that would be in my mind somewhere, right? Oh my gosh, it only took him 8 laps. Like, now I have to really be careful about managing my temps. So that needs to happen as well as the pushing. So that's what these drivers are very lightly pulling up to the right. They're not trying to get out of lane. They're not trying to disrupt the path. They're just trying to put some air into that motor.
Just looking around to see what else happening on the racetrack. This field is divided into 3 groups as they run right now. That lapped car ahead of the leaders that you saw there. Going to be the next person to go 2 laps down. That is Jacob Bradley. We've talked a bit tonight about the Bradley and Romanidis battle to be the lucky dog. Michael Romanidis is in the second pack, so he's still 15 plus seconds back. Would not be in position to steal the lucky dog anytime. There's the third pack that we haven't talked a ton about. That would be 27th position on back. Daniel Falkenham, Matt DiCianni, Adam Blocker, John Forbes Jr., and James Holzer are in a precarious position now. They do not have the numbers that the race lead pack has, as they will all go around Talon Smith. That was for position. Talon ended up with no drafting help and is not going to be able to blend in with that lead pack. But these group does not have the strength in numbers. Oh, and there's trouble in the tri-oval, and out of nowhere, a caution out of the race leaders.
Wow, that happened quickly. That's how it happens in Daytona. It's very, very fast. We see that, I'm going to call that a dark pink, a chrome pink. I don't know what we call that, but that car looks to be badly damaged, and we'll wait and see what happens as the replay loads up here. Oh, just a bad push.
Yeah, that was a wicked checkup. And again, I mentioned earlier, if there's a checkup at any point, you have to be so mentally sharp. That thing went down the line so quick, and the odd man out, I don't think there was anything that Thomas Lloyd did wrong, but that's just where the straw broke the camel's back. He gets sped out of line, had a chance to save it right there, snaps back down in front, gets finished by Christopher Pfeffer, and it is Thomas Lloyd's accident who will bring out the caution flag. And that was your one job as the race lead group, Derek, was to not bring everybody else back into this race. You wanted to be able to settle this amongst yourselves, and they will not be able to do that.
No, they will not be able to do that. Now, you're right. That was a big checkup. You saw Heitman plot a lane up ahead of that wreck. So obviously the checkup happened towards the front of this lead pack, and this, when that thing accordions backwards, someone's typically going to be the victim of it in one way or another. Watch this replay here from the onboard. This will be from Michael P. Frisch, and he's just going to cut it through the grass. That's a nice save. He'll hopefully get it back on track. Let's stick with it for a second. Yeah, that's a good merge. Right around the iRacing pace car. We are everyone down pit road. Not a surprise. Everyone was going to put gas in. We were probably about, 10, 15 laps from our next pit stop. So this will serve at least as an early pit stop for all these drivers.
And now this race does get interesting because this pit cycle is 129 laps from the end of this race. So as all the cars come down pit road, they're going to get filled up with fuel. Many of them going fuel only because they just got tires the last time in. I think a lot of drivers going for 2. I don't see any trend on if it was lefts or rights more popular. It's probably based on what you didn't do the last time. But if we were to try to go to the end of this race with 2 additional pit stops from here, Derek, you'd have to average 42.6 laps on fuel per run. We just got finished saying that the longest fuel stints that we saw leading up to the only cycle to green flag service we've seen so far tonight was 43 laps. So now we are right on the money to start talking about fuel just as soon as we kind of thought that storyline had faded away with the way the race was playing out.
Yeah, so that storyline for the moment is on hold, right? We'll wait and see how that turns out and who can do what. 42 laps per run is going to be a big ask for everybody. It's going to require some patience for all these drivers if that's what they want to do, right? It'll require to almost be like maybe 90% throttle throughout the run, maybe 85% throttle, and be willing to ride. And that'll be hard. The other thing that's going to have to happen is now you have to hope we don't come back to a point where we get a couple cautions in a row, or maybe you do, because that will kill that conversation and sort of kill that math number and make it easier on these future runs. But wow, just like that, that's how fast it happens. And you know, you and I were kind of looking around the track and watching all the stories, and next thing we know, that lead pack could cost a caution.
Well, just when we thought that this thing was all figured out, shame on us for thinking that we had so much knowledge so early into this iRacing Daytona 500. Lights out on top of the pace car. Some wave bys going around. Jacob Oster is going to go from 18 laps down to 17. Jacob Bradley will go from 2 laps down to 1 lap down. So I believe he had just gotten lapped by the leaders, again putting him 2 laps down just before the yellow came out. That's a pretty significant blow to the 34. If that yellow had come out maybe 5 laps sooner, he would have had the opportunity to get back on the lead lap in this one. Instead, he'll have to go from 2 laps down to 1 lap down. It is good news, though, because it is going to put a full lap in between him and Michael Romanidis. Romanidis is going to be stuck 2 laps down, I believe, or Bradley's only going to be 1 lap down. Some cars did not pit. Jacob Oster stays out. He was down pit road 10 laps ago, so a bit of a gamble there. Why not? You're 18 laps down. Do anything you can to get a lap back. Not sure it's going to pay out in the end, but credit to him for sticking with it.
Yep. Get that lap back. You never know what that may come. Remember, this is part of the iRacing NASCAR iRacing Series calendar. So this is a points race for a bunch of drivers. This is a special event, and we all love it, and we all want to win it. But you have to think big picture for points sometimes. And hey, you know, who can I pass, or how much iRating can I gain? And all those things are in the back of your head somewhere. And 18 laps versus 19 laps, well, that may matter when you and I read the results in about 2.5 hours from now. We'll wait and see. But yeah, Jacob Bradley will be the only car a lap down. He was the lucky dog, as you said. So good news for him. He just needs to ride until the next caution. But all right, well, here we go, Evan. Let's rack him up lap 73 and see what happens.
Still 127 laps to go in Daytona Beach. DeMerchant and Hill going to be lined up on row number 1. Green flag back in the air. It's a massive jump for the 3-car, clearly coordinated with Christopher Hill. He drops down to the inside, and those two get linked up quickly.
Yeah, nice little gap that'll get closed up pretty quickly by the cars behind him. That's Heitman, I believe, on the bottom lane, that black and green machine. So he'll quickly get up here and see how this lines up. And there we are, 2 wide racing, what the crowd's been hoping for all night long. The question is, how long does it stick around, Evan? Because this has not been the trend. Oh, as the night goes on, there's our new leader. That's the 31 up front. That's the first time tonight.
Your first time tonight we've seen that one is Will Height looks to lead this race as they come off of turn number 4. Huge push, courtesy of Quentin Warman. They're going to be the leaders at the stripe to give lap lead number 1 to the 31 machine of Chris Wilhite. He'll be the 5th different driver to lead a lap in this race, joining Mercurio, Warman, DeMerchant, and Heitman. But how long can they stay up front? It's been a minute since we've seen this many side-by-side cars in the lead pack. It's the leader through 17th position, 27th, I should say, sorry, who are part of this draft. And second group of 2, the pink 17 car, Connor Urashak, gets up to 3rd. They'll tuck in line, though, instead of challenging the race leaders to the outside. And this could give Robert Malexa an opportunity. Now it's the number 5 Chevrolet leading the outside.
Yes, it is. Now it's the number 5 up top. He's going to try and get a run going here, see if they can build momentum, because they will get a slightly better bit of momentum and run off the top lane, just by the way that they don't have to, maybe move that wheel as much. They don't get to cut a little bit of speed, so they can get up there and make that happen. At some point, I'm curious, Evan, if anyone begins to use that side draft, I've been waiting for someone to use it to have a visual example to talk about it, but the side draft dynamics in iRacing are definitely different this season. You can really put a parachute on someone's car with that side draft. You can really affect how a lane moves. You can really gain spaces by side drafting. It brings back old, to me, I think it's like mid-2000s NASCAR memories with how the side draft works, and eventually someone's going to use it. It just hasn't come into play yet.
Only 4 cars on the outside. So far, Malexa unable to use the push from Cabe McClenny, Noah Bitts, and Adam Blocker to be able to challenge the leaders. And just as soon as the 24 abandoned ship, 3 cars to the outside, here comes the number 5 car on the outside. Big head of steam. Is this one going to pay out? It's the 3 of Seth the Merchant, on the outside. Pushed by the 15 of Christopher Hill. These two have not had a tolerance tonight for sitting in traffic and riding around. They want to be first and second the whole time. Maybe that is just what they find exciting, but maybe that goes back to what Derek had mentioned earlier in this race, that some may argue the safest place to be on the racetrack is as the leader. Keep everybody else behind you. They don't have support, though. They'll drop back down in line, and they'll have to build some momentum up. They're going to get a whale of a run, I think, here coming out of turn 2.
Well, I'll tell you what, Evan, that move right there by DeMerchant and the 15 car behind him, I thought for sure that 15 was not clear. That looked scary from up here to watch Christopher Hill try to pull down in lane. He did it. He made it successful, but there could have been more than like an index card between him and the car behind him.
And now DeMerchant goes right back high, and Christopher Hill gets the memo. Hill joined with him, this time a little bit more support. Jack Mace now leads the 5 of Alexa. They'll be 3rd and 4th in line on the bottom. I mean, they are seemingly being aggressive to get up there to challenge for the lead. The problem is the lead group of 4 is doing the exact same stuff. It's been pretty textbook. And a Wilhite and Warman leading the inside. Off each other in the corner. Aggressive bump drafting down the super stretch. One car going to end up 3 wide and dropping back. That's that 6 car who's going to drop back in line, and Nick Vroman.
Yeah, Vroman got maybe a bad bump and really went up almost into the wall, if not into the wall, and then got it recovered and making the run here. But DeMerchant seems determined. That's a big wiggle. Oh my gosh, how did they save that? Look at the big checker behind him. People everywhere. Whoa.
Very similar and on the same spot of the racetrack that the caution flag previously came from. It was Robert Malexa III who got spit out of line, and one of the more aggressive drivers from this group is on a one-way direct flight to the tail end of this lead pack. Tried to cut the 29 car off. Kyle Brummett said no thanks, and Malexa is going to drop all the way down into position number 22.
That was a save. I have no idea how he saved that car wiggling that hard in the middle of the draft at Daytona at speed and got it collected. And yeah, they fanned out behind him, but everybody saved that. No big wreck to speak of. That could have been awful.
Almost real bad, especially because it happened when the pack was 2 and 3 wide. It will space things out just for a moment. I think that's really just the pack needing to get its bearings back together. I don't really think it spooked anybody all too much. Inside advantage goes all the way back to the 15 at Christopher Hill, make it the top 13, but leading the charge on the outside now, the number 1 car of Brian Mercurio. Those numbers in these top split events seeded based on iRating. So Mercurio, the number 1 car, has the highest iRating. And if anybody in this session, that means that the 37 of Jonathan Evans, also part of this lead pack, has the lowest. Again, low being a relative term. You're talking about some of the best in oval sim racing in this group right here. Still a massive numbers advantage to the cars on the bottom, but don't tell the outside lane that 6 car of Roman's making some headway.
Yeah, those cars up top are really now connected. There's a couple of good pushes happening, some real nice bump drafting, and some just drafting using the air. All happening at top lane. I see now more drivers want to move up. Oh boy, that car on the bottom, about 4 deep. I think that was Gitter, I think, who thought about it and then realized he didn't have the time to make the move and wisely got back to the bottom. as to not make this worse. But now he's up top, and now Gitter's going to lead the outside lane, and now this lane's going to get a big run, Evan. They're going to get up here. They're going to carry momentum. They're going to hopefully find a way around here, and Gitter very well might be our next leader. Nope, he's been cut off now.
Thought maybe it was going to be his, but the 7 machine now going to be forced to push the 17 of Connor Urashak, because Urashak dove to the outside line, and now it's the former NASCAR Road to Pro qualifying series champ who leads the top side. What can the Canadian do in the 17? He's got the numbers, he's got the push, and the outside lane that was non-existent a lap and a half ago has got the race lead at a 4. Look at those two cars hooked up and pushing through the corner, as it is going to be a push to the race lead for the 17 car, and Connor Urashak is going to get lap lead number 1 on the afternoon. He chooses to stay high. How tempting is this, though, for Gitter or Heitman behind him to duck underneath him?
Yeah, this takes a lot of trust in that salmon-colored car to trust the cars behind him, that no one wants to kind of dip out a lane and make a move on him, because right now, you're right, Gitter, Heitman, even Vroman back and forth, easily probably pull the bottom and try and make a claim to the lead, but nope. There goes Urashak and Gitter and others to the bottom here to lead that lane around. But you're right, he spent a lot of time up on the top there. Kind of surprised me a little. But some drivers just prefer a lane, and it's hard to get them off of it if they do prefer it.
Yeah, it's difficult to do so, and side by side throughout the field now, Urashak has his pusher sticking with him, but Chris Wilhite going to be the undeniable force here. He eventually is going to get the help from the 2 of Quentin Warman, and now we are deadlocked. It is a 195-mile-an-hour pace lap down the back straightaway. Look at all of that movement as you jump on board with the 3rd car in line. That's the number 26 of Heitman. The outside clearly more aggressive. This time the 7 won't stay loyal, though. Crossing to the inside is Gitter. He wants to lead his first lap, and they'll have to drag race for it. Urashak's got the better bite, though, and that number 17 leads again.
Yeah, that was a great bump by Heitman right in the back of the car, right in the middle, and gave a little bit of speed boost there to that car up front in Urashak, and did a great run. Of course, kind of Urashak has the advantage, Evan, of already having raced here this week, of course, because the Cup Series kicked off on Tuesday. Yourself, Kenneth Bueno, and others in the broadcast team, so he's had a bit more experience maybe than some of these other drivers.
And of course, open setup race here tonight. That Coke Series race was an open setup as well. I would not be surprised if he's got the same thing under the hood for this one as he did 3 nights ago. Clearly, these drivers want to lead laps. They want to be aggressive. And a lot of that strategy, that patience that we saw before caution flag number 2 was really out of necessity. These drivers could back it down. They could go single file. Look at that shot, though. They have had no intention of doing so since we've gone back green. A 28-car strong lead pack is now only 14 laps away from the halfway point in this Daytona 500. Derek, it has been a pretty good pace thus far. 2 cautions, 1 green flag cycle of pit stops, 3 pit stops total is what has gotten us to this point. And look at that 26 in the 6 car. Heitman and Vroman trying to anticipate where the run's going to come from. I thought they were going to go low to block. They'll stay high, opens up the door. Urashak wants another look.
Oh boy, isn't it kind of weird to think 20, maybe 30 laps ago, you and I were talking about single file runs and different draft packs and who was where and when will this race pick up and when will they get double file, and now that's what they want to be. That's all they've been since the restart is double file. We've seen lead changes, bump drafts, everything you can think of in this pack. Some of these guys might be racing. Do they know there's like 100 plus to go? Some guys are racing like it's 10 to go.
Still a big number of trucks in this race. There is a level of attrition that is to be expected with these long endurance oval races, but only 3 of the 37 trucks who started this race have been eliminated. In fact, there's still 31 total on the lead lap. Look at the move by the pink car there to the outside. What a move. Connor Urashak saw the run coming topside, pledged no allegiance to the 26 of Derek Heitman, and he'll take a push by the 6 car, and just as quickly quickly as he turned his back on someone. Vroman pays it back. Now the 6 car underneath them. They are going at it on the front of this field, and it's going to be Michael P. Frisch, his race high P2, now the 2nd car in line.
Yeah, let's watch to see if Frisch does the same thing. No, he sticks pretty well right to the back of Yurushak. He did not decide to be one of the people who made the undercut and get around there. So Frisch will lead Yurushak around here, and probably for another time around, Yurushak looks to be our race leader, and he is. So this right here appears to be a good grouping. Frisch seems content on the back end of Yurushak here.
You can see off of the back of the race leader how much movement is coming from Frisch's car, and that's not just the 14 moving. The camera gives you a bit of a warped perspective of that, right? But that's the combination of the 17 moving and the 14 moving. There is a skill to being a lead car in a drafting track like this, is how predictable you can be and how straight and calm you can keep that car through the corners, because every little bit of kind of lateral movement like that on somebody's bumper is begging for trouble. Yurushak and Co have been good on the bottom, but up front, who's going to get their first lap led of the night? Give it to the car on the bottom. Noah bits that time by 4/1000ths of a second, who abandoned Cade McClenny, headed to the tri-oval, and now the 22 car has led his first lap led in this race. We went, the first 48 laps with one car leading all the laps, and we probably had 4 different leaders in the last 5 times around.
Oh, yeah, it feels that way, doesn't it? Just things are really heating up here on the track, and people are now getting anxious, and people want to go somewhere. And I wonder if it's because with that shortened pit stop on lap 71, now that talk is done. Everyone knows we need to pit again. There's no saving enough fuel. So now let's go race. Now let's go make something happen. Now let's go have fun. You know, the harness is off, the training wheels are off, whatever analogy you want to use. Let's just go race for it.
And you wonder how long can these drivers keep up the pace like this, as they have been aggressive from the jump. Some separation again, maybe going to lure us into a false sense of security. The first car on the outside is now Sebastian Martin. Haven't talked much about the number 4 car. He's pushed by the 20 to James Holzer. They're back at about 14th and 15th position right now. They're eventually going to get a run. That combination of the side draft, that combination of a good push from the 28 car, it's going to give those cars up top some movement. And you can see Quentin Warman's perspective. Everybody sees that momentum swinging to the outside, and at least 2 cars went to the outside to join in on it.
Yeah, everybody's kind of picking their lane, and some drivers want to pick whatever lane seems to be moving. You'll see a lot of drivers who just move up and down throughout the night, and they just want to, ride the hot hand, if you will, and make happen what they can. Some drivers really have a preference, though, Evan. I kind of hinted at this earlier. Some drivers love one of the 2 lanes. Some drivers think the bottom lane is safer because they think, hey, if something happens or when something happens, I have all that track down there to the left that I can use to avoid whatever happens. Some people prefer the top lane. They think it runs better. They think that it gives them a little bit more speed out of the corner. Just whatever reason, they love that lane. And again, if you love a lane, it's hard to convince you to go run the other one. You'll find any kind of mental reason, whether it be real or just something that you can find in your head. I hate this lane because of blah. I don't like it. It's not going fast, or it's whatever. And so it's always fun to see drivers who are stuck to a lane in that moment.
Already halfway through this fuel run, 22 laps removed from the last time we came down to the pit lane. Remember, you got to hit about a 43 if you want to be able to make it to the end of this race with only 2 additional trips down to the pit lane. That means we'd be looking at pit stops somewhere closer. If I can do the math in my head, somewhere around 106, 107 might get you somewhere into the conversation. But again, we'll have to see if those numbers can ring true, as these drivers still have a long way to go before they can hit those numbers. Even closer to the 110 margin would be beneficial. More cars on the outside than the bottom. How has Blaze Crawford, Michael Frisch, and Jack Mace not let a lap in this race yet? We've been talking about those three names a ton, and right now they sit first, second, and third. Do they stay together? Does somebody else step out of line and try to pull a fast one on Crawford? This might be one of the faster laps we've seen all race out of anybody in the field. There's some smoke in front of the leaders. Was there
Pit road, I think.
somewhere ahead of them?
I think it was down pit road, I'm pretty sure. I don't see anything on the track. But there's Blaze Crawford's first lap, by the way. And that purple banner on his name just record means he has the fastest lap in this race at some point, by the way. Turned a 44.776. Now, that would have been when he was way back in the drafting lane, because that's how Daytona works. But so your driver, who has the fastest lap, also currently your leader of the race.
Robert Malexo was the driver involved in an accident in the tri-oval just ahead of the race leaders. Let's watch the look here. He gets stuck out of line, tries to pull.
Oh my gosh.
I talk about cars getting out of sync. It came up that 9 was on the right rear quarter panel. That was a massive hit into the outside wall. And that was a full-on accident on the racetrack that included a car stopped. Because there were no cars coming, the sim did not trigger a yellow. So that was the smoke we saw ahead of the race leaders, which is going to end the night of Robert Malexo III, somebody who we had spent a lot of time talking about earlier in this one. His night done in the blink of an eye, but no caution. This race stays green.
Yeah, this race does stay green, and that's good news for everyone up front. Maybe bad news for anyone who wanted to use a caution to catch up or get a new fuel strategy or what have you. Now we see Blaze Crawford coming up on a lapped car, and man, that was an aggressive bump he gave to that Lowe's machine, and that Lowe's machine wiggled pretty hard. Blaze wants to see maybe use that car to get up there and make something happen again. But for right now, it's Conor Jurashek leading. And this really, it's just been an exciting race since that last restart, Evan. And oh, there's a lap car moving up. That's the 4. My goodness. I said lap car. That's not a lap car. I'm sorry. That's Sebastian Marin. I thought he was lapped earlier, but I guess he's back on the lead lap. I'm sorry. I said lap car. He's not. That is for a position, Evan.
Yeah, Sebastian, somebody else who has been all over the place so far in this race. He would like to lead his first lap of the afternoon. He's got a good opportunity to do right here as he's on the inside line. And Kane McClenny up in line on the outside. You can see that car move as he gets the push from behind. Pretty aggressive stuff out of the 32 machine. Matt DiChiani behind him. But in the end, Sebastian Marin will get lap number 1 on the night. Now there's lap traffic ahead of the race leaders. That'll be Christopher Pfeffer. Look out. That trend of holding low stays true. It'll be a hair-raising moment as they get a squeeze to the outside 3 wide. Pfeffer will fall 1 lap down in the number 30 spot. And now we'll hope that he gets sucked up by this lead pack, and we'll now have to worry about playing in defense for the Lucky Dog spot. There is more lap traffic not that far up the road either in Talon Smith. Smith will now be the last car on the lead lap. As you can see, these leaders now, they gave Marin his lap lead. Now they go to the outside and leave him high and dry. It's Crawford back to P1.
Not a surprise that Blaze Crawford moved up, by the way, because you and I could hear in the iRacing voice chatter Blaze Crawford telling Marin, listen, dude, you've got to hold still. You've got to do better. Blaze Crawford was not happy pushing Marin around for whatever reason. And so I knew it was only a matter of time before he made a move to get around him. And already Marin has went from first probably to about 6th or 7th in line.
He drops back real quick, just like that, and you're on board with the car behind him. That's that unmistakable salmon color of the 17 machine to Conor Jurashek. He's currently in the number 8 spot. All of a sudden, you go from being P2 in line to P7 in line, but to get a breakaway like that, and that's kind of the constant revolving door here at Daytona as we are 100 laps down and 100 laps to go. We're halfway home and the iRacing Daytona 500, and happy that you're part of this one with us. But the rules of Daytona kind of opposite of that of the freeway here in the States, Derek, right? Freeway, you stay to the right if you're not passing anybody, and you go to the left lane to make moves. Daytona's kind of the opposite. There's not a lot of passes happening on the inside. That's kind of the conservative lane, the I like where I'm running lane. And if you want to be aggressive and you want to move position, you go to the right. You go to the outside lane.
Yeah, that's true. I've never really thought about that analogy and that effect. You're right. That's typically how racing at Daytona works here, is that you want to be aggressive on the outside and make it move, and then once you think you've been aggressive enough, you sort of merge back in the left lane and calm down for a bit. A couple things here. First off, we're at lap 100. Now, as a driver, for me, Evan, this is where the race gets easier mentally for me. Now we're counting down the laps. In fact, look at the top of your screen. Now even the RaceSpot counter starts to count the laps down. Mentally, for me as a driver, this becomes easier. Counting down, like, oh gosh, okay, only 99 to go, only 98 to go, and it keeps moving down, and it feels like you're making real progress. And that first half of the race, when it's counting up, oh man, it just feels like it takes eons to get there. Also, thanks for hanging out in all the chats here. And hold on, come back to that. That's Patrick Gitter. He got moved out of lane, and he saved that car somehow, Evan.
Was another near wreck as he got turned off of the bumper to the number 1 machine of Brian Beccario. Nice save for Gitter. You will see drivers push in the tri-oval far more frequently than you'll see them do in the corners, but it's kind of easy to forget sometimes that those cars get really loose in the tri-oval, and that can be just as treacherous. Look out! 3 wide. Here comes the 10. Daniel Falkenham was relegated to a third pack that was half a lap behind the leaders for a lot of this race, and he had absolutely no desire to lift when he had that run, and he will bully his way into the top 10 for the first time, now make it the top 5.
Wow, Quentin Woman got pushed 3 wide, by the way. That 2 car, that blue 2 machine, just didn't really get a choice. He just said, hey, you're 3 wide. And he moved up when he had to in order to avoid any kind of contact. So that was a tense moment that worked itself out. The 2 fell back in lane. But now we got 2 new people up front. That's Jack Mace. That's James Holzer. They're not leading the pack for the first time.
First opportunity for Mason Holzer to get some time up front. Look at the 36 of Cade McClenney going to the outside of the racetrack as well. 96 laps to go in this race. This time by, if you want to be able to make to the race on a 2-stop strategy from here, 86 may be the soonest that you can pit. 86 laps to go. So can they get another 10 laps of fuel? The math would say yes, because that would be 43 on the dot. But Derek, that 43 number came when we had single file lines and cars working together. That's not to say that if you're 4th or 5th in line or at the back of this lead pack, you're not saving fuel. You absolutely are. But I just wonder, with the constant revolving door of different cars going to the race lead and different drivers trying to make passes, have they been as fuel efficient on this run as they were on the prior sample?
Well, the answer to that is simple. The answer to that is no. No one here is being as fuel efficient as they were before. There's a lot of movement up and down the field. New leaders, passes, 2 wide, 3 wide. Everything's happening here. So no one, maybe, I guess if you're in the back of this pack, maybe you are. But no one, probably in the top 10, even maybe top 15, is being fuel efficient here. So 43 laps, this seems undoable at this moment right now. I would say, honestly, I just don't see it happening in this moment. By the way, there's the 4, Moran back up front. This is John Hall. He's pushing kind of Urashak. So Moran, again, will lead a lap here at Daytona most likely, but they're going to pit right, I would say, probably at 40. I just don't see 43 doable if you want to race this hard.
Clearly, these drivers are some of the very best, and they don't just show up here to ride around and be strategic. Is that a smart way to do it? Yeah, but they're also here to have a good time, and I hope that everybody joining us on the stream is recognizing that, because, again, previous run was calm. It was about strategy. It was about numbers. It was about teamwork, and I don't know if I've seen 2 cars stay loyal to each other much in this one at all. Seems like everybody stabbing the next car in line in the back at the first opportunity. On board with the 4th car in line on the inside. That's the number 2 machine to Quinton Warman. We've chatted an awful lot about him tonight. Somebody who we haven't talked a ton about, though, is your new race leader, Jonathan W. Evans, the 37 car, lowest I-rated driver in this field. It's his first lap led on the afternoon. And Daniel Falkenham, who has continued that rise through the field, is in prime position, should he choose to make a move to the outside and try to get his lap led. There's no momentum up top. So no surprise this 10 stays down there, but he's got Sebastian Marin in line behind. Curious how long this 10 car stays with that 37.
Well, but I don't know if Jonathan has it already, but there actually is an iRacing achievement for being the highest numbered car in a split who wins. Basically, I think it's called last to first. I might be wrong about that, but basically being the 37 car and winning would lock that achievement for him if he could pull this off and be the winner in 92 laps. So a cool moment for Jonathan here. You know, getting to prove that maybe iRating doesn't always matter. You know, your car number doesn't always matter. You get up here, you lead the race, you have fun, you show that you belong. I want to say once again, thanks for hanging out. No matter where you are watching us, whether it be Facebook, whether it be YouTube or Twitch or what have you. A couple questions that come in. Someone asked Evan, does the track temperature change? The answer to that is yes. This track will cool off as the day goes on. Not by much, I don't think. In this style of racing, I don't know that it matters as much as it would elsewhere, but the track temperature does change as the day goes on.
It absolutely does, and that track temp will change due to a couple of reasons, right? That'll change as the kind of in-sim weather changes as well. Right now, it's partly cloudy conditions. It's 4:35 in the afternoon in the sim, and it's 68 degrees Fahrenheit. As this race runs later into the afternoon, you can expect temperatures after 4 o'clock to start to drop off a little bit. You'll notice the sun will begin to set more and more down at the opposite end of the racetrack that we're looking towards in turns 1 and 2. That is going to bring the outside temperature down, in theory, cooling off the racetrack. But the cars have an opposite effect. The cars running on the racetrack adding heat into that track, and they may balance each other out. But certainly a race like this, mid-afternoon conditions on the sim, warmer conditions, different track temps, slightly different grip in the racetrack than what you see in the night race, right? That's why you'll always hear drivers historically talk about a Daytona 500 where handling is such a big story when compared to, say, the night race here for the Firecracker.
Yep, so the handling is very different throughout the day and the night and can matter a lot. Just for a note, we're about an hour and 20 minutes from the lights even turning on at Daytona. So very likely we're done before that moment even happens in this race, Evan. So the temps could change if we just really finished at night. But I think for the race setting we're in, where it's currently about 4:35 p.m. virtual sim time, it's going to be pretty consistent and not affect the cars that drastically, I don't think.
Is VST an officially recognized time zone?
It is in my head.
There you go. I've never heard that one before. I'm going to roll with that now. VST, virtual sim time, is that 37 of Evans has been enjoying his time up front, but it may not be for long. Look out on the outside. Can 2 cars take on the world? It's the 20 machine of Blaze Crawford, pushed by the number 14 of Michael P. Frisch. They came flying up, and then just as quickly as they arrived on the scene, they got disconnected and dropped back. It's hard as that second car in line to be able to push all the way, do it all on your own. If that engine temp wasn't a concern and that water temp wasn't an issue, you can keep pushing to your heart's content, but we've already seen one car lose an engine. Are we going to go 3 wide? Lapped car low, lapped car high, right down the pipe, but that's going to make it 4 wide. Can they make it work? Hold your breath.
Oh, buddy, I'm up here and I'm nervous. Like that, I can't imagine what it felt like on the track with being 4 wide with a lap car inside. That's nightmare fuel for some iRacers.
I don't know if I can think of a worst case scenario than a lapped car high, a lapped car low, race leaders 2 wide, and middle of the corner. It was a messy one.
Oh, pit stops.
Pit stops. 87 laps to go in this race, so 1 shy of the number that I had floated. And we've got a handful of cars in. Bitts, Warman, Heitman, Wilhite, Vasquez, Vroman, Lloyd, Arcabuez, Smith, Peffer. You got Bradley and Romanitis. Nearly a dozen race cars down pit road on the cusp of the fuel number to be able to pit right here now under green flag conditions and pit one more time and be able to make it to our scheduled distance. Michael Frisch says over the radio, he's coming to pit road. He's currently scored in the number 9 spot. So who else from this lead pack is coming in as that first group of cars blends back out?
Yeah, 43.5 laps is the even number from where we're at 87 to go. So keep that in mind about the target for fuel And if they're going to want to do that, they're going to have to probably calm down in this run and be willing to ride. And I don't know that's going to happen, Evan, but pit road is a busy place here. Everyone's down almost. Everyone's getting gas. Everyone will get tires. And we'll see who merges out. So on the bottom of your screen is pit road. You see all those cars down there, massive amounts of cars. Up top, you see our current leaders, DeMerchant, Hill, and others leading a small group around this racetrack.
And with two massive groups down pit road, that leaves only DeMerchant and Hill to that point who have yet to come down pit road. They're going to be in this time through. So those two packs you look at now, they will beat up on the exit at turn number 2. The first green flag pit cycle, it was the first group to pit who got the advantage. That would be the cars on the outside. But with the way it looks right now off the backstretch, I don't know if that's going to be the case. And then what can DeMerchant and Hill do? All of these cars are racing for third on back because the 3 and the 15 are on pit road right now. They've got to fill it up with fuel. They're going to leave pit road together. And now these two packs going to try to merge with DeMerchant and company. I think they will get ahead of Seth and Christopher. There, those two cars are on the bottom, just leaving pit road.
They're going to have to hope that they kind of luck out in the timing here. So down the bottom of your screen, this is in the middle of 1 and 2. There's that pack ahead of them. They're going to hope they can kind of luck out and pull up in the back of this drafting lane and quickly, you know, attach the back to that drafting lane. And if they don't, they're going to be well behind. Let's see if we can see them in the camera shot here. I don't see them exactly. A little hard to tell with the number of cars from that camera angle, but there's DeMerchant. So they have successfully, there it is. They have successfully gotten into this drafting. Oh, they're 3 wide. That's not where you want to be off a pit road. But the good news for them, they're part of this group. They're in contention at this moment in the race.
And unlike on the first green flag cycle of pit stops, it is not the first group of cars to pit who cycles through to the race lead. Pitts, Warman, and company were the first cars in. They are not the ones who cycle through to the lead. Oh, there's a spinner and a caution. Just as we got through a green flag pit cycle, around goes Talon Smith.
Wow. That he was right in the middle of a few cars. That could have been really bad. So we'll wait and see what exactly happened to Talon when the replay machine loads up here in a moment. But, well, that whole fuel strategy, this is going to help them. They're going to get a couple laps under yellow to kind of bring down that number. Here's Talon Smith, that pink car in the back, Evan. And does he just catch up the field too fast? Oh, no, he got tagged by that yellow car. Is that the 23?
27 to Jack Mace.
Yeah, the 27 to Jack Mace, you're right. Just sort of barely caught his back end and got him around. He tagged Jack Mace, not on purpose, just with the way that car was yanking around. And whew, that was a wild ride for the 13.
Yeah, 13 maybe strategically painted bright pink so that all the other cars saw him sideways in the middle of the road and didn't run him over. Could have been a lot worse for him. Mace apologetic over the radio. I think just kind of got frustrated that he was stuck in the middle, dropping it back, and knew that he had to get in line quickly to not lose the draft, and just tried to pull in line too quickly. Just nicked the right rear quarter panel and spun out Talon Smith. And again, then a fantastic piece of driving by the 27 to avoid the 13 when that thing came back up and onto the road. And now I think this actually aids the current pit strategy that we're on. I don't know if any of the leaders would come back down pit road. I might not be shocked, Derek, if we see cars towards the tail end of this lead pack come down pit road, get a little bit of insurance in the tank. I think these leaders were on the number anyways. The yellow will give them an opportunity to save. Are they comfortable with that, or do they want liquid insurance? They want liquid insurance to pit road.
They sure do.
They come, and they're all going to come down for just a splash.
Yeah, this will be just a splash, just enough to put just that little bit of fuel in to fill them back up from where they were, and this will help a lot. This will mean you're basically running 40 laps when the caution's over, and you see how fast it's going to happen here. I was trying to get a look and see if anyone maybe was going to stay out and what that may look like. But I'm surprised, Evan. I was with you. I thought maybe the back half of the field was going to come in, and we were going to be talking about, you know, split strategies and who did what and why and where and when in a few laps. But basically everybody. I think I see 2 cars, Christopher Hill and Seth the Merchant, are the only 2 to not pit.
Yeah, and the reason I thought we'd see more stay out is because under the yellow flag, you use about a half the amount of fuel that you do under green flag conditions. So you're going to save no matter what. But again, you mentioned it earlier. There's a risk of overtime if you have the opportunity to come down and get a little bit of insurance. Maybe Seth the Merchant and Christopher Hill can go to the end of the race. Maybe they can go to 202, 203, 204. Can they get through a green light checker, though? Can they get through 2? Maybe not. Maybe this additional fuel saving and the extra fuel that the cars down pit road just took on, maybe it gives them that little bit extra. The benefit here is, of course, Hill and DeMerchant did not cycle out to be the race leaders after that green flag pit cycle had concluded. Last time by the start-finish line under green, they were back in the teens. So they did pit later than everybody else. So it's a lap of fuel a difference. And this gives them a track position benefit. So in the end, the call is the opposite of what I thought. I thought the cars at the back would pit, everybody out front would keep the track position. Instead, it's the opposite. The majority of the cars pit, and it's Hill and DeMerchant from the back who stay out and take the track position. And Christopher Hill is going to get his first lap led of this race as he paces behind the pace car.
Certainly is. By the way, not advertised. So I hope you noticed. Did you see the 30? Sort of took the Joker lap there on the pace lap. I don't know if you noticed that. It took the bus stopper. I guess we now have to call it the Le Mans chicane down through the pace lap. I don't advertise that. It's not recommended, but he did it in that moment. By the way, if this looks fun and you are an iRacing member, this is not the last Daytona 500 this weekend, Evan. Tomorrow on Saturday, speaking of East Coast times, there's 2 fixed races, one at 5 a.m. Eastern time, one at noon Eastern time. But on Sunday, it's both. You can come back and run the open setup. That's what these drivers are running. That will occur at 10 a.m. Eastern, and then we'll wrap it up Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time, the very last fixed Daytona 500 of the 2025 iRacing calendar. So still a few chances for you to get out there on track and try to win your own. And boy, what a rush it is if you can pull it off.
Again, more than 1,500 drivers competing in this time slot of this Open 500. So over the course of the weekend, you're talking about tens of thousands of starts for iRacing members and hundreds of thousands of laps maybe even being completed in this one. So highly encourage you. This will be the only top split coverage that we'll have this week. So again, if you have any desire to try it out, no matter if you're somebody who could be in one of these top splits or somebody else, maybe like myself, right? 4,000, 3,000 iRating, kind of you just enjoy hovering in that range. Yeah, you know, have some fun down in those splits as well.
Yep. But I want to put some names in your head real quick, Evan. Let's see. Noah Bitts, Quentin Warman, Chris Wilhite, Derek Heitman, Blaze Crawford, Thomas Lloyd, and others all pitted at 1 to go. So they actually wanted a bit more liquid insurance than what the leaders got. So 1 lap, who knows if that means anything, but I wanted to point it out. There were some drivers who pitted at the 1 to go.
So more cars coming in top off in Bradley and Oster. Several drivers in for fuel under the caution flag. It's going to be an 80-lap run to the end of the race, still needing an extra stop to be able to go race distance. Green flag back in the air. Christopher Hill brings us to green, and he'll jump right to the outside and get with Seth the Merchant. We saw these two do a similar coordinated restart, but it was a role reversal the last time. This time it's Hill going up to get the help from the number 3.
This time the top lane appears to be working. That's not a surprise. That top lane has been pretty awesome as far as getting runs, and part of it right now is because that bottom lane is not fully connected. When we saw that last camera shot, you see a few gaps in the line, and that will allow this top lane to get a run here. But it's Hill, it's DeMerchant, Marin is clear. I think even John Hall could be clear to the bottom if he wanted to, but all of them are happy and content being in the top lane of this racetrack.
We'll see how long this lasts as they want to stay to the outside of the racetrack. And now the 17 to Machida Euroshak clear. Maybe that's the cue for the 25 of Hall. Hall and Euroshak go to the bottom, and they build up a run. Is there going to be a block? There it is, late from Sebastian Marin. He'll drop to the inside. He's got all the speed in the world as he tries to hang on to that car. That thing is fishtailing off of turn 2. But Sebastian Marin going to go to the race lead now as that 15 to Hill and the 3 to Merchant find a spot in line. Their outside lane disappeared in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, that leaves now Patrick Gitter up there leading that top lane around, and that's cars probably about, 8 cars back on the pack, and we'll see if they can get it working. Oh, there was someone pulling up. We'll see how that turns out, if that car can help that lane move or if he must have pulled back down. But drivers are loving this high lane. This is a really great improvement of the drafting model of the past, I don't know, 3-4 years of iRacing, Evan. At one point, this felt like a pretty single file draft race you had to run in iRacing, but now we finally got both lanes working, and it works beautifully.
19 car going the wrong direction on the outside. No drafted help for Matthew Boniface, as it is a very spread out restart that sees these top 3 maybe trying to replicate what we saw on the first restart of this race about a dozen laps in, trying to pull away, get away from this pack. They're not going to be able to do so. You can see the outside just keeps falling apart now. There's only spinner 24 car around. That's Adam Blocker. There are no cars behind this, and the sim earlier in this race did not throw a yellow for a similar spin. Blocker's not going to get a yellow here either.
And that may be much to the chagrin of everyone, honestly, Evan, because you'd think everyone right now would love an additional caution. That would kind of help comfort that number or pad that fuel number. But here, watch this. He's going to get, I guess he's going to kind of try to clear himself over that black and green car, and this was not clear, and around he went in that moment. I mean, just not clear. At least from that angle, it looks like he just kind of came down and wasn't clear.
Unfortunate shakeout there for Blocker. And again, not only was the accident itself unfortunate, the positive would have been maybe there wasn't a ton of damage, but it's a bit of salt in the wound when you don't get the yellow flag to fly, because now he is a damaged race car on his own and is certain to get lapped very shortly. He's on the front stretch, the leader's on the back straightaway. Give it a half a dozen to a dozen laps or so, he'll probably be getting lapped, and then he'll have a bit of competition in the battle for the lucky dog with the 13 Machine Talon Smith, who he was running around for position not that long ago anyways. It is Sebastian Marin leading this field, John Hall second, Connor Urashak is in third. 75 laps to go at the start-finish line in the 2025 iRacing Daytona 500. Still a massive amount of cars in this race. Count them, 32 strong of the 37 who started, and the outside lane slowly starting to build up some momentum. Right now, that line led by, I think that's the 23 car up on the outside, maybe the 33.
Wow, cars are moving lanes so fast every lap here, Evan. It's almost hard to get a good log. So the 28 just moved up. That's James Holzer. He got clear from his spotter. But James, one of, I think, 4 drivers in this race, Evan, using a real-life spotter. James has Nick Hulslander up in the tower spotting for him. It's one of the perks you get to have in iRacing service. Maybe not enough drivers usually a car in the wall. And now they're going to scatter around here and get clear of it. Some cars in the dirt. And everyone appears to be okay.
Okay for the moment. Another close call there as they were 5 wide through the grass, and that may be the straw that breaks the camel's back and splits this field up. This is kind of the race we were looking at about 100 laps ago. Split up, multiple packs, and now we're seeing it again, but you would not think the race to trend this direction late. I don't know if the gaps that have been formed, though, will be big enough to maintain this. The race leaders, those top 6, certainly are going to want to do everything in their power to stay away, but everybody else, almost everybody else, in a second group now that spans from Jonathan Evans in 7th position all the way down through, we could call it Blaze Crawford in 21st. Here's a second look at that huge moment on the front. The 20 car up into the outside wall, and somehow everybody able to avoid that car. Thankfully, it stayed in the wall.
Yeah, luckily it stayed in the wall. Thankfully, you're right. And then everyone just sort of got nervous about what if it didn't stay in the wall, and they started scattering everywhere. Cars down in the grass, cars 2 and 3 wide on the track, and everyone got it gathered together. But now you see the effect of that, right? Look at the behind it. Look at this couple of different packs that are racing here because of how those cars scatter. But Trent Beck is going to say, you know, James Holzer, one of 4 cars with a live spotter. There were 5. Zach Novak had one earlier as well, but that live spotter, Evan, can be so much powerful and such an underused skill on the iRacing service. That live spotter can tell you so much. Watching a moment like this, the information you can get right here, being told what line to pick, where to go, when you're clear to come up, things that maybe the iRacing spotter can't do to the accuracy of a real live human spotter. And it's a great benefit when you have someone in the tower and in your ear that you trust.
Yeah, and the iRacing spotter is only going to be reactive, which is helpful, certainly, but I think the biggest benefit that you get by having a real person spotting for you in the session, and I suspect a lot of the drivers in this have that, is the anticipation, right? They can look at the speed, they can look at the runs, they can see who's doing where, what, when, and why. And then knowing what's happening around you means that if something happens, it's not going to catch you off guard. And yeah, you can still make those reactionary calls, but it is certainly different if you have somebody who's giving you a full picture. And it also just takes one less thing off the driver's plate, right? I think drivers could pick up some of this information anyways, right? I'm sure they have an advanced timing screen if they have a 4th monitor. They can look at their relatives. They can look at their mirror. They can kind of figure these things out on their own. But if they have somebody feeding that information to them, it allows them to focus on their task at hand. And I think also then minimizes the chance that they are the cause of an accident. As we expected, the gaps built by that scare in the tri-oval were not big enough to split this field up like we saw earlier. This is now one big, long, 27 car strong single file line on the bottom. With this many cars, I don't think they ride around like this for the next 30 laps to the pit stops.
No, probably not. But I want to put a bow tie on that topic about the live spotter. I think the one thing about a live spotter that really can be the most beneficial, it's a voice in your ear to help keep you calm and help keep you focused, right? Because in certain moments of iRacing, it's easy to get worked up. It's easy to get mad, easy to get frustrated, easy to lose focus on something. And having that voice in your ear that's a friend, that's a trusted, spotter or a trusted person that you communicate with, the benefit they have is that they can quickly calm you down. But boy, look at this. This feels familiar from about 2 hours ago. Here's Derek Heitman up to the lead.
Yeah, Heitman goes to the race lead, and it is on once more. Just as they were all single file, it lasted, maybe a lap? And then those cars made the advance on the outside. The 26 of Heitman led the way with some drafting help courtesy of Joseph and Quinton Warmond. We haven't talked about Joseph to the power of 2 much yet tonight. He's a staple, Derek, when we cover a lot of these top split races, just like many of the drivers in this field are. He's been a bit quiet, started back in 30th. We mentioned off the jump, hey, some drivers may have the strategy of hanging back early, not wanting to be in the conversation. I'm not going to say that 68 laps to go is the flip the switch, let's go moment, but not surprised to see some of those drivers who have been quiet starting to enter the picture.
Yeah, this is the moment when I think people now want to figure out where they want to be, right? We still got to get through one more pit stop, right around probably 40 to go. And I think how late you can pit and how much, how few laps are left in the race when you do pit will determine when that quote-unquote go point is for you. So we'll wait and see how that does turn out. By the way, what I love most about Joseph, he said Joseph to the power of 2. Within iRacing, we are a real name-based system, and if you were to sign up today and have a common name, it's possible someone else already has your name, and iRacing will put a number at the end of your name. At one point, I was Derek Watson 3, for example, before I put my middle initial in my name. Joseph has a 2 after his name, Evan. That means he's the second Joseph to sign up on iRacing service.
The second Joseph to the power of 2.
Does that make him a power of 4?
Maybe. I think we got to dive into this. It may also be his second account. I've seen that happen from time to time. I have the benefit of having a relatively uncommon last name, so I don't have any numbers at the end of my iRacing username. But I will say I've seen many drivers who I thought had pretty unique names too, and they've got 2s and 3s after them. I just feel bad for the John Smiths of the iRacing service because those ones, you'll get into the triple digits, I fear.
Yeah, I did see someone I think it was like Ben Smith or Ben Johnson, maybe, that was like 107. I was like, ooh, that's a big one right there. But yeah, so I just find it funny for Joseph that he's the second person. Maybe you're right. Maybe his other account, maybe he forgot his password or who knows what, but we'll wait and see. But I think it's always an interesting moment when I see his name come across the service. But look at that small little gap here now between Warman and Moran. It's not very much of a gap. It's not it'll close when they want it to, but I find it odd that the 4 cars keeping that gap. It makes me think maybe he's content riding just not full throttle and saving a bit more fuel.
And again, we assume everybody good to go on the fuel number, but that does not eliminate the need, to your point, of wanting to save fuel. The more you can save, the later you could bit, the better you'll be off if this race goes to overtime. And I don't think saying the O word this early on is a jinx. We all have a common understanding of how this super speedway racing works here on the iRacing service. After they were single file, saw that Derek Heitman group rocket to the race lead, jump down, and we haven't seen them go double file yet again. So where does that next group of 3 or 4 cars that want to disrupt the system come from?
That's a great question. And does it come before the caution? Wow, that's a bad word. Does it come before the pit stops happen? That's the other question to ask here. Maybe everyone's content not disrupting anything before that moment. That may be when the go moment is in this moment. With 64 laps to go, which means we've turned about 137 laps here, Evan. At this point, I think the thing we don't talk enough about is how the fatigue kicks in for these drivers. This may seem simple. They're great at it. They make it look easy. But keeping your focus for this long, or keeping hydrated, or not losing focus is a task that's very difficult when running an iRacing Daytona 500. And every driver has a way of doing it, Evan. Some of these guys maybe listen to music while they race. Some have friends in Discord. Some prefer silence. It's very interesting getting to know these guys and finding out how they keep themselves locked in while they're racing.
Yeah, right. Sometimes, and we'll see this on other broadcasts as well, when we get the onboard camera looks with these drivers as we go on board with Evans here. Some drivers aren't talking at all, right? It doesn't matter if it's chaotic on the racetrack, if it's pretty calm on the racetrack. They're pretty locked in. There are other drivers who, even in the most stressful moments, can't stop talking. And that all comes down to a personal driver preference, what they feel like makes the most sense for their driving style. And again, I'm sure that there are the team structures happening in this race, drivers, crew chiefs, spotters. But again, I'm sure there are some drivers who are in channels with each other. So we're able to pick some things up when we reference the driver open radio chatter. There is the option in the iRacing sim itself for drivers to text chat to one another. Oftentimes they'll use hotkeys to indicate coming down pit road. Not likely to be typing anything at full speed. There are also obviously the open voice channel option where you can broadcast to all drivers. Then you can segment things up driver to driver. It's a little bit clunky though, so drivers will use something like a Discord, like a TeamSpeak together. I'm sure there's a group of 3, 4, 5 drivers here or there in a Discord together too, kind of acting as each other's spotters and crew chiefs informally.
Yeah, and the one that always amuses me in talking about this idea of how you focus or what you do, you're going to correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's Colin Bowden in the Coke Series race. That man always has some kind of sporting event on in the background while he's doing the Coke Series races. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like, I don't know. He's always watching something, it feels like, in the background while racing. But there's other drivers who do it. Some of these guys were probably watching the truck race earlier in real life while they were racing. I don't have that focus. I'm sort of a keep silent kind of driver. I can't have too much chatter when I'm racing. That said, I do like to listen to a little bit of music. It just varies race to race how I can kind of lock in.
And I find myself the opposite. Like, I almost feel like chatter, like, I don't want to, diminish it and call it small talk, but I feel like small talk is helpful to me in longer races, especially like an enduro race, but even longer stuff like an event like this. Whereas on the opposite, I feel like I would be too focused listening to the music or the lyrics of it, unless I just kind of write it off as it's background noise. I can kind of tune it out.
Yeah, I do agree. The playlist matters. There's only a couple artists I can use as background music, and it has to be kind of music that I can just not worry too much about. But yeah, it's amazing what some drivers will do, keep themselves locked in. There's also drivers who keep, water bottles near them, or soda, tea, whatever, snacks to kind of keep themselves hydrated or what have you, because depending upon your time zone, this may occur right during dinner time or before dinner time, and you can find yourself pretty hungry at this point of the night.
I thought you were going to be referencing empty water bottles, and I was thinking to myself, "Oh, we're going there."
No, that's not to green white checker territory.
We're not going there, so we'll table that part of the conversation. Yeah. But these drivers are prepared to be in the cockpit for long periods of time. And we will end that part of the conversation there. Still single file. Again, pretty surprised. Once I saw Heitman and company go to the lead, I thought, okay, that was going to be kind of the indicator to the rest of the field that we're going to go at it. No one's really going to play nice. It's going to be pretty aggressive. And that hasn't been the case. They went to the race lead, and everybody has stayed single file. I think positioning yourself before the pit stop, though, I don't think that's a bad idea. I would personally want to try to make some moves now. I have almost never seen a green flag pit cycle, Derek, at a super speedway like this, where let's call it 30 cars as an example, right? 30 cars in the lead pack pit. They pit at different times, however many intervals. And then at the end of the green flag pit cycle, it's still 30 cars in the lead pack. Just haven't seen it. There is always some group of cars, either by a mistake or just not having enough drivers, pitting on the wrong lap, whatever the answer there is, that just lose touch with the lead pack. So I suspect when that green flag pit cycle comes, of this lead pack that has 27 cars in it, take at least 10 of them out, in my opinion, out of contention. So if I'm in the high teens, low 20s right now, I don't know if I want to ride around quite as much of it as a guy in the top 5 might want to.
Yeah, I get that, right? You want to be in position, but I also think it matters who's around you, right? We had this talk right around lap 40 about making friends and who you trust and who you don't. And if I'm just picking a random name, if I'm Seth the Merchant back in P10 right now, if I'm near some friends or some teammates or some people that I trust to go pit with, I might be content, because the worst thing I want to do is pit with some people who I don't trust or I don't know how they race, and then maybe someone, blows a pit stop entry or does something that throws my focus and causes me to have that mistake on pit road. But I agree with you. Typically, closer to the front is better. And you're right. Either it would be due to speeding, due to poor pit road entry, poor pit road exit, or what have you. Very likely, the pack that you and I see now will not be the pack as it stands if this stays green for the rest of the race. And man, look at that camera shot. That is a long pack. I mean, that has got to be at least 16 cars long at this point. I agree with you in that essence. I just wonder if maybe who I'm around matters more than where I am, if that makes sense.
And we'll see if that's the case. There is also no equation that you could punch it into to see when the best time to pit is. First green flag cycle of pit stops, it was the first group of cars who pitted that were the ones who cycled through to the race lead. Second time down to the pit lane was not the case under green flag conditions. It was the middle group of cars who were the ones to cycle through to the race lead. So there is no math. I do think, though, when you talk about numbers, if you leave pit road 2.5 seconds behind somebody else, you're not catching them right out of pit lane, because they're going to accelerate before you. You will not get their draft. Well, Jack Mace right there, about 2.5 seconds behind Derek Heitman. And that's why I think the physical distance, which equates to time between the race leaders and the cars at the back of this group, I think that is something that is a cause for concern.
By the way, something of note, also of concern, if we stick with this camera shot all the full way around here, and we stick any of them, look at that glare that happened. Sorry, I kind of called that live and late, but watch the glare that's going to come out of 3 and 4. This is going to become a cause of concern as the sun is setting, as the virtual sim time goes on, if you will. Watch this glare that's right there in the driver's eyes. That will make moves on this front straight more difficult for the next few laps, because you're less inclined to want to make a move up or down if you can't see what the heck is going on around you. That glare will eventually go away as the sun sets here, as we get into our sunset time. But boy, that glare is a killer here at the front stretch of Daytona.
We did mention it get later and later into the night, past 5 p.m. in sim time. I don't foresee any storm clouds in true, Central Florida fashion that are going to push this race under the lights like what may happen this weekend. This thing's going to end just shy of all those Musco lights flipping all the way on and racing under the stars here in Daytona. 52 laps to go this time by. Still looking at about 14 laps or so away from cars coming to pit road. Now, the fuel window is going to open at about 9 laps, but I don't see any reason, Derek, that you would shortchange yourself. Come down pit road. Sure, you would save some time in the box by having to add less fuel to the car, but with Daytona being Daytona, I don't know if I'd ever, if given the option to make my fuel number lap number 200, if I could make it 206.
Yeah, I agree with that. You want to have that peace of mind, right? That matters a lot to every driver to know you can go the distance and you're not constantly checking that black box and wondering about it. So I agree. You don't want to push it too far, though. You push it too far, what happens is you're down to 1 lap of gas, and if a caution comes out, you're kind of stuck, right? You have to really try to ease the throttle or maybe take a penalty for pitting early. So it's a real game of when do you pit, right? So that's challenging. I have a question for you, though. Came from the Twitch chat. They want to know if you're surprised that more of the Coke drivers are not working together lap by lap. Are you surprised there's not like a iRacing Coca-Cola Series driver alliance in this split?
Maybe a little bit, and I don't know if it's necessarily a Coca-Cola alliance because those drivers all race with each other in the Coke Series and they know each other quite well. I think it's more so that Coke Series is dominated by 3 of the back-end teams, and maybe that's what I'm a little bit more surprised by. But they've got teammates that aren't in Coke as well. When I reference that there's maybe a big group of drivers in Discord together, that's kind of the groups that I'm referencing, and you might want to be racing with those guys. I also think there may have been a little bit more of that coordination up front, but I am a little bit surprised that you don't see them all together. Now, I will say you got Coke Series rookies in Warman, Urashak, and Hill running in 3.69 right now. That's 3 of the top 10.
Yeah, I don't mind that whole alliance thing. I don't want to overstate this and say something that I don't mean to say, but just because you're all in something together doesn't mean you're all friends or you all trust each other or that you all like to work together, right? That's like saying because, if we all work at the same place, by default, we're all, best friends. You're not always best friends with your coworkers. At the end of the day, these guys are going to run their own race. This is not a team race by any means. So I think sometimes too much gets put into that whole their Coke drivers things. And again, I'll be the first to say I'm not really in the loop about the back ends of the Coke Series, about who has beef and who doesn't have beef. I'm not insinuating that at all, as much as just to say that I don't think just because they're all Coke Series drivers that they're all best friends who feel the need to work with one another.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with you on that point. There are less than 50 laps to go in this iRacing Daytona 500, so let's let you take in the sights and sounds of the World Center of Racing. Let's head down track level for some RaceSpotTV fan immersion. What a moment and what a save, as that was the 29, I think, nearly crashing of Kyle Brummett. They got out of shape into turn number 3. The 14 also with a big save. That was Michael P. Frisch, and nearly chaos at 42 laps to go, as we are now on the doorstep, Derek Watson, of the final green flag pit stops of the night.
You used my full name. I thought I was in trouble for a second, but you're right. No, that was a crazy moment right there, and you can hear the iRacing voice chatter pick up vividly when that moment happened right there. People saying, "What are you doing? Why are we doing this?" And there's maybe some words out there in that voice chat that I don't want to repeat in this broadcast. But whew, that picked up very quickly at the end of RaceSpot fan immersion. And by the way, we are close to pit stops. We're 42 to go. I suspect in the next 2 laps, most of this field will be down pit road.
2 laps will be right on the money for the cars who pitted on the yellow flag to be at 43 laps. Now, Christopher Hill, remember, he stayed out, did not pit, so Hill is showing as having been out there for 44 laps on fuel. Now, remember, some of those were under yellow. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison, but I would suspect Hill is going to need a pit sooner than the other drivers around him. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. Seth the Merchant was the other driver who had stayed out with him. Seth also showing having been out there for 44 laps. If they have to pit sooner, it's going to be a problem, but here we go. Race leaders down pit road with 40 laps to go, and Heitman leads them in.
Yeah, Heitman leads them in, and I think I see one black flag right now. That's going to be Matthew Boniface. Black flag, I'm assuming, speeding on the pit road. And that's the only one I see so far, but that will be a big hit to his race.
We know there was going to be mistakes. What's the execution going to be like? You have enough time to put 2 tires on, and the time it takes to fill it up with fuel. Look how close all those cars are on the pit road exit, but it'll be Quentin Warman, lead car off of pit road in that group, as here come the leaders now. Christopher Hill comes down pit road with Seth the Merchant, Mercurio, DiChiani, Mace,
back to the screen.
and more.
Well, sorry to cut you off, but back of the screen on the bottom, there was some big smoke with the entrances to pit road there. I thought for sure someone made contact, but everyone seems to be driving away. This driver's really locking him up here coming down to pit road.
Yeah, when you lock it up, you can't steer that car either. So not only is it kind of a sign that you've gotten too aggressive or more aggressive than you would have liked, but it is also, to your point, sometimes an indication that an accident's going to happen because you can't steer to avoid things. Daytona's got to be the easiest pit road to get onto as a single car, and probably the hardest to get onto in a pack. We have seen almost everybody coming down pit road except for the lead 3, and are they headed in this time? James Holzer, Michael Frisch, and Blaze Crawford are down pit road. You see some smoke off of the 20. I think he gets down okay, and now every single car has been down pit road and pitted. Quentin Warman currently being shown as your net race leader in the blue number 2. Is there any way those 3 cars on pit road can get out in front of them? It's not looking good, because Warman and company already coming through the tri-oval. These back 3 were not a part of the lead lap, and now with 38 laps to go, you're looking at a 6, maybe 5 car make it breakaway for the lead that is led by Quentin Warman.
And right now, anyone who pitted here pitted right around lap 40. Everyone's got to be breathing a sigh of relief here that if this race goes the advertised distance, I don't think fuel plays a factor here, Evan. I think everyone has taken care of that part of the race, and we're probably done with pit stops short of a caution. So right now, the pit crews can start packing up and breathing a little easier, hopefully. But right now, it's Warman leading Heitman, Falkingham, Urashak, and others around this track.
Yeah, it was 5 for a moment. Now they conglomerate into a larger group as everybody blends together, and this lead pack, which that time by was 7 cars strong, now have a really good opportunity to settle this race out amongst each other. Now it's a bit of a duality. because, yeah, 36 laps is a long way. It kind of feels like a whole duel almost. Back when it was the twin 125s, you do not want to, if you're Marin, if you're Joseph, if you're Hall, yeah, you don't want to be the back three cars in this pack. But what is the worst thing you can do? Cause an accident and bring more cars into the conversation. You have a vested interest in maybe lying over a little bit here to allow this race to tick some laps off. And then if it's the 10 to go mark, if it's the 5 to go mark, wherever that benchmark is set in your head, you switch at that point, and then let's get at it. As they stay single file, this lead group of 7 has been faster than pack number 2. Pack number 2 has got DeMerchant, it's got Hill, it's got Mercurio. That 3-car group, they've got a lapped car there as well. You can't do it with 4. This lead group of 7 is going to be faster. They're going to continue to pull away. I'm not going to write the check yet, Derek, that if this thing stays green, it's going to be amongst these top 7, but it'll be a hell of a tall order for those cars 8th position on back to do something, because by the time DeMerchant, Hill, and Mercurio fall back to group number 3, you're talking a 9-second difference with less than 35 laps to go.
And boy, isn't this just sort of the perfect prediction you made earlier? You said, hey, we have a line of, 16 to 20 cars in the line. You said when pit stops happen, it's going to break apart due to strategy, due to who pits where, due to who pits when, due to maybe some black flags. We saw one during that cycle. And you're right, here we are, 7 cars in line, and they're pushing Quentin Warman around this track. So, and I think the person with the hardest job in this pack, by the way, Evan, is John Hall. He's the last car on this pack, and something we've not really touched on tonight with this new package that's being put out there by iRacing. It is incredibly easy to fall off of this draft pack. You have to be aggressive as the last car. You have to be bumping. You have to be right up on the car in front of you. In that case, Joseph, or Joseph Squared, as you referred to him earlier. If John Hall in any way breaks focus, lifts, or anything wrong here, he will quickly be off of this front draft pack.
Yeah, it is a tricky spot to be in, and you know there's going to be checkups, right? We've seen checkups from a single file lead pack at other times in this race. So you can't be planted on the bumper of Joseph, because that eliminates your margin for error. If the accordion's going to take somebody out, who's it going to be? Probably you, as that last car in line. But if you hang too far back off the bumper of Joseph, to your point, you could lose that draft altogether. And at that point, you won't even get an opportunity to battle for the race win here. So it is a precarious spot to be in if you're John Hall, just like it is a very important spot to be in if you're man number 2 in line. And Derek Heitman, you kind of control the pace of this race. You're trying to keep aggressive. You are adding time to the second pack behind you. So where do you kind of back it down a little bit? You're still going to push Warman, but you still need to make sure you're getting air to the car. You can see Warman even moving up the hill a little bit that time. So that 26 of Heitman doesn't need to go high to get clean air. He just holds the double yellow, gets clean air, cools the car down, and then the 2 comes back down and they get back together. They are very aggressive here, but it's an uncomfortable spot to be if you're Heitman, because you're on board with car number 3 in line. Daniel Falkenham is all over the bumper of the 26. Well, the 26 is all over the bumper of the 2. There's a lapped car ahead of them. It looks like it's going to stay low. That's going to be Noah Bitts, who will fall 1 lap down in 25th position. Looks like he'll stay there. Leader should have no trouble here.
Oh man, they got super close to him though. They waited to the very last second to make that pass and really suck every ounce of draft off of him they could. That was a little closer than I would have preferred it to have been. Noah Bitts not having the night he wanted so far. I mean, he finished 3rd on Wednesday night, by the way, in an Open Daytona 500. So he's already come really close to winning this race once already, Evan, this week. And something I noted, there's already been 2 open races this week. And so far, there's no chance of a repeat winner. Our 2 previous race winners this week are not even in this race. It makes me wonder, Evan, once you win this race once, do you just kind of hang it up? Are you good? Or do you just say, hey, listen, I did that. There's nowhere else to go. You know, I don't know, but neither of our previous race winners are in this race.
I am never going to win a top split iRacing Daytona 500 because I will never be good enough on the sim to have the iRating that would put me in this position. But I don't care if it's split 35, Derek. If I win one, that's it. Not quite as extreme as walking out on top, right? Winning the championship and then retiring. But I want to sit there for the next 360 something days, and I want to feel good about my iRacing Daytona 500 experience. I don't want to give myself an opportunity to spoil it. So if I win this thing, I think that's probably it for me for the week. Now, the opposite side of that is for the 36 cars who don't. You're probably a little bit ticked off, and yeah, you bet you'll be running the other two if you're able to over the course of the weekend. There's the onboard look with Connor Urashak. Again, one of the drivers in the field tonight that participates in the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. You can see those races every other Tuesday night right here on the iRacing official channels. He drives for Letarte Esports, the team that is headed up by, of course, the legendary NASCAR crew chief and now broadcaster Steve Letarte. You got Quentin Warman, who's leading this race, who we haven't talked a ton about, even though he has been in contention for much of this race. He drives for Hayek Motorsports, who made their return to the Coke Series this year. Of course, if that name is not yet totally familiar to you, that's the rebranded, what was formerly JTG Doherty Racing. So all kinds of top-level sim talent in this, and it is not just those top two. It is the Joseph Josephs and the Daniel Falkenhams, the name that we see all the time when we do this every February. Those are some of the biggest names that we expect to be here.
And that's the fun of doing these events, right? Is it these guys who are not Coke drivers, who don't get to race in that series every Tuesday, are still out here rubbing elbows or rubbing fenders or rubbing doors with those drivers and kind of proving to themselves in their own form of bragging rights, hey, I am that good, right? I can do it. And you know, coming back to a point you made, and I want to make this point, you said there's about 1,500 drivers running this event tonight across multiple splits or multiple instances of this race. Listen, whether you win split 1, split 2, or split 35, you're a Daytona 500 champion, and that's a bragging point for anyone on this service. And, you know, be proud of that, post about it, you know, whatever you got to do. Don't let it take away that it's not a top split win. That's the fun of the service, but boy, this is getting interesting about who's at the front. And that group in the bottom, that's Seth DeMerchant. And they are, I think that's 8 on back on the track here. They're just falling back, though, Evan. Last I looked over the left side of the screen, they were about 8 seconds back. Now they're over 9 seconds back. They are losing ground here on this field.
Yeah, to mention, eventually they would drop back to the third pack, and that would put them about 9 seconds back of the race leader. The problem is the DeMerchant pack is dropping off of the leaders at the same rate as that third pack is. So they have not even been able to combine forces, get a bigger pack, help each other with the draft, because they've all continued to fall off as a collective. So there is no help coming for the DeMerchant group in terms of, all right, well, if we drop back, we'll, get picked up by a couple other cars, and then we can maybe try to make a run at it. That just simply hasn't happened because they are about the same pace and just cannot get to each other as they run right now. So a little bit of salt in the wound. And again, I said I wouldn't write the check earlier on, but I think I'm comfortable saying that at 25 laps to go the next time by, without a yellow and a restart, you're looking at these 7 cars who are going to be able to fight for the Daytona 500 amongst themselves. Quentin Warman, Derek Heitman, Daniel Falkenham, Connor Urashak, Sebastian Marin, Joseph Joseph, and John M. Hall are the cars up front. And to their credit, they have been doing everything that they need to do to not mess this up for them. You saw the Falkenham stats there on the screen. Somebody else who is competing in the Coke Series with 6 Karma, of course, represented by the Norse Force Racing Group. They could have been, not smart about it. They could have fought with each other, but these guys are very experienced on the service, and they're doing exactly what they need to do. May not be the most exciting, but I think the only question remains is, again, when do they flip that switch? Is it at 10? Is it at 5 to go? And then at that point, it's no holds barred.
Yeah, and I think that's what the group from DeMerchant on back is hoping for, is that maybe with like 15 to go, these guys get raced, these guys get active, they get starting to want to race one another, because that 2-wide racing or 3-wide racing or whatever they decide to do could slow this pack down and allow, DeMerchant and Hill and Mercurio and others back there to catch up a little bit. So that's what Seth DeMerchant has to be kind of silently rooting for in the back of his mind, is that this group decides to race sooner than later. and see if they can help catch up the time that way. But look at these cars kind of offset. You can tell that the temperatures are getting hot in the car, because you see drivers like Daniel Falkingham, third in line, that's kind of barely offset on the right, trying to get some air back in that car. I think we saw Connor Urashak sort of doing the same thing. That's just indications how hard they're pushing. They're trying to keep the engines cool so that when it comes time to go, that they are not worried about engine temps.
Another lap car going to stand on the outside of the racetrack. This time it'll be Jonathan Evans, who has been trying to stick this one out. Back in the number 30 spot, has not had the night that he wanted after starting up in the number 14 position. And of these 7 that we think this race win is going to be decided amongst, if you're joining us in the live chat, let us know. Do you think that this race will be settled by one of these 7, or do you think that Daytona's got a little bit more trickery left in her before this night is said and done? And are we going to be talking about a little bit of late race magic for some, heartbreak for others, and chaos for all? There's kind of an open forum happening right now on the Open Radio channel that we kind of explored a little bit earlier, on strategy and drivers trying to get synced up. And most of that is for the cars in the back trying to find a drafting partner. I have not really heard a peep out of these top 7. Again, they could be communicating Discord or TeamSpeak, but at least in Sim, it's kind of that solid understanding of what needs to be done.
Yeah, I agree. It's very little chatter happening across the chat at all. And I mean, I've not heard, I think Warman, Falkingham, Urashak, Marin, or Joseph all night long. We've heard a little bit out of Heitman, I think, but mostly just kind of playful banter, trying to kind of keep himself, I think, entertained. But nothing of any real, dare I say, serious level, right? Nothing of any strategy level being discussed. And I'm kind of happy about that. You and I have had this talk before when working together, that one of my biggest, I think, griefs about the voice chat service is how many people are willing to share too much of their race, right? It be fuel strategy, fuel numbers, tire usage, although that's not a factor here at Daytona. It's my old man yells at cloud moment of the night, when I just get mad when people give away too much data for free. That's currency in a race like this. I don't know why people give it away as they're going around the 34.
34 are going to stay low. Leaders have to go high to get around. That would be Jacob Bradley, who is going to fall lap down number 4 in the number 29 position. It will temporarily split this lead pack up. I don't know if that chink in the armor is going to be enough to actually allow those top 3 to get away, but there's a noticeable gap between Urashak in 4th and then Sebastian Baron in the number 4 or 5 spot, I should say, sorry. But just as quickly as it formed up, they'll suck back together, and it is going to be one more solid train of 7 as well. I've seen a couple of people in the chat have been pulling for Derek Heitman. They think the number 26 machine is going to be the one who takes this one home. I know he's been very aggressive in the field as we've completed now 180 laps, and now we're inside of the final 20 in this 500-mile sim racing gauntlet that is the iRacing Daytona 500. There is no more lap traffic up the road until you get to the halfway down the back straightaway. I don't know if that means we're clean for the final 18, but for a while now, the leaders do not have to worry about that.
No, they do not. And I think it's interesting how the different chats are reacting, by the way, because over in the iRacing Twitch chat, it's a Daniel Falkingham watching party, basically. There's a lot of Falkingham chatter happening in the Twitch chat, so a lot happening over there. And a lot of the Twitch chat thinking or asking, why would the top 7 not just stay top 7 and ensure they, finish top 7? And the answer for that is because it's the Daytona 500, right? This may be virtual, but I don't care. It's being able to say you won this event. Some drivers don't get more than one shot to do this. And if you're up there right now with 18 to go, you have to start thinking about, how do I make this happen? How do I win this? Because this is one of those events that if you're a lifelong NASCAR fan, if you're just winning the Daytona 500 is one of those things we dream about, that, hey, one day I would love to do that. Well, here's your shot. And it may be your only shot. You may never find yourself in this spot again with 18 to go where you're riding P3, P4. You have to try to take the shot. You have to try to make the move. When do you do it? That's the question. But you could not convince me to just ride in line for the next 18 laps and just, be content with a P4, for example.
And you look at some of the other cars who have led laps in this race. Noah Bitts, Jonathan Evans, James Holzer, Cabe McClenny, Blaze Crawford even, Brian Beccario. 9 laps led for Chris Wilhite, right? All those are cars who are in the lead pack, coming to the final cycle of the green flag pit stops, and for whatever reason, when they blended back out onto the racetrack, lost touch with this lead pack. So to your point, you may not have another opportunity to, have a great setup, be a part of the team you're a part of, to be able to realistically try to win one of these. But then there's also some degree of luck involved in super speedway racing. Did you pit with the right cars? Were you in the right lane at the right time? Did you avoid that wreck? Did you get collected in it? There are so many different elements, both in and out of your control, that have to go right for you to be in the lead pack. At this point, would we say that there's 16 laps to go in a 500-mile sim race? Back on board with Euroshack, they're in 4th. This lead group of 7 has not budged since they left pit road about 23 laps ago. Based on the fuel numbers that we've seen tonight, they would be good for about, I would call it, an additional 8 laps beyond the scheduled distance, so to 2:08. I think that would cover you for 1, maybe 2 GWCs. Whereas if we were to get a yellow, would not be surprised if cars just want to come down and get the fuel to be safe no matter what. And now at 15 laps to go, those thoughts of is it go time are going to start to get bigger and bigger in the minds of these cars in line. Lap car staying high this time. That'll be Talon Smith as the leaders go by low.
You say that, if a caution comes out, what would these guys do? If I'm already 8 laps to the good, and a caution comes out that does not trigger the green white checker, I'm probably content where I am, actually. Like, if I'm Quentin Warman, if I'm Derek Heitman, if I'm Daniel Falkingham, top 3, you would need a crowbar to peel me off of the track and make me give away my track position. Like, you couldn't probably talk me into it. I think I would value that track position more than I would value a little bit more gas that I probably don't need.
Well, and then you start to get real strategic. I don't think these drivers are going to have this much say, because you think, okay, where would you like to be? If we're running single file like this all the way to the white, which for the record, I do not think is going to happen. So I don't think you can get this specific. But if you're that car in line second, if you're Derek Heitman, would you rather be car number 2, come to the white flag? Or if you're Daniel Falkingham, how many moves do you think can happen in 2.5 miles? If you think Heitman can pass Warman in 1 and 2, does that mean that you think you can get him in 3 and 4, right? Those are the things that are going to start throwing through your mind. Very rarely in this current modern draft package on the iRacing service do you see those kind of finishes where you can set it up. Now, back with the tandem draft days, you remember that more than a decade ago in the Cup Series, you'd have those conversations. Push a guy out to the lead, leave him, return him to 4. But with the pack racing, even though there's only 7 cars here, so much of what happens once that switch gets flipped is not going to be thought out. It's not going to be strategic. It's just going to be straight up muscle memory.
Oh, yeah, at some point. And I think that number probably for me, by the way, is, I would say the latest would be 3 to go, for the record. No one's waiting until the white flag to make their move. But it's funny, a chat we've been having over the Twitch chat has been, who's in the best position right now? And I think that's just a matter of opinion. There's no data that's going to prove the answer to that question. Do you want to be the leader right now? I probably would. I like leading because it's just, it feels good. But some people would say maybe Heitman or Falkingham have the best run because they have a chance to pull out here and make that run. But man, look at that little gap right there back to Connor Yerjak. It's temporary, but those small gaps make me nervous as far as who's planning what and what's going to happen when. Because typically if you fall back like that, you might be trying to get a run on somebody.
And I'll follow that up, but I just want to say one name that neither of us said out loud as we kind of thought through the strategy was Quentin Warman. I don't know if anybody thinks that being the guy on the hot seat and up front is the position to be in. But you're right, if you're Euroshack here, is this 17 car playing with the runs, right? In order to make a pass, you will actually sometimes physically brake, drag the brake, drop off the car ahead of you to get on the bumper of the car behind you. And then once you're physically connected, you're going to get a better run than if you had just feathered the throttle and stayed in between those two. So I wonder if this 17 Machine Euroshack is kind of playing with that a little bit. How long does it take me to get a run? You know, do I need to back off and a lap and a half ahead, a lap ahead, a half a lap, a corner, right? What's that number until I can get a run to the 10? And then Euroshack, if he's not already wheeling and dealing, who's going to go with him? If that 17 is the one who goes out of line, can he trust the 4 of Sebastian Barin to go with him? Or if he jumps out of line, is that 10 of Daniel Falkenham going to jump out in front of him and take the push but block the 17? I feel like that 3rd or 4th car in line is where we got to be looking at, as now it's officially 10 laps to go.
Yeah, and the only thing I find interesting about the leader right now with Quentin Warman being up there, the line he's taking through the corners, Evan, it's not what I would call ideal in some cases. Typically, most drivers would say paint the yellow line, right? But watching through the corner here, he kind of lets the car drift up a little bit through the corners. And what that says to me, a little bit in a weird way, is almost like he's almost kind of practicing blocking the run that may happen. Almost like he's predicting any lap from now that Heitman or Falkenham or Euroshack or someone in this group could try to make that move, because if you're already sort of up there off the lane, it's easier to kind of pull up in front of someone and block that run than if you're painted to the yellow line. So I found it kind of odd at first that he's not painting yellow. Look how much higher he is than the rest of the field. I don't know if that's just a driver preference and how that setup runs, or if he's kind of just trying to kind of put his little stamp on the field and say, hey, listen, I'm onto you.
Still waiting as they are all in formation, 7 cars deep. 15 wasn't the answer. 10 wasn't the answer. How much longer until you make a move that's going to win you the iRacing Daytona 500? On board with car number 4 in line, that is Connor Euroshack. He seems to be, at least most visibly, the one that's starting to mess around with the runs, with some moves. Now, everybody is kind of not trusting each other at this point. Any alliances, any partnerships that have been made over the course of the last 193 laps, irrelevant. To this point, it is now officially every man for himself, and it's going to be only 7 more trips around this time by. Warman also, if you're the 2, I wonder, Derek, if you try to make sure that 26 doesn't let you get too far out in front. Very easy for Heitman to jump out of line, and if he gets help, there's nothing Warman can do. You almost have to watch for the, that 26 going to try to push you way out in front like he is right now. And if Heitman drags the brakes, gets a big run of his own, it's very hard to defend something like that. So now you got to start thinking defensively as the 2 car to not get too much of a lead, as counterintuitive as that may seem.
Yeah, that's true. And hey, look at that lap by. Look at the 10 car. That was Falkenham. You ask yourself, was that little bump to the high lane there, was that just sort of the car getting a little weird, and maybe a little squirrely, or was he trying to kind of test the waters and see who would go up there with him? I don't know which that may be, but it did stand out to me when he went that high up in that last corner there of how that worked. So you're right, though. For Warman, it is about not getting too far ahead, because in a draft sequence, typically cars that get out there pretty far ahead just get swallowed up in the draft. So that'll be something else to keep an eye on. But man, I think with 6 to go, I just think next time by, at 5 to go, I think the gloves are off. I think that's the moment when everyone's got to start making moves. If you're someone like John Hall or Joseph in 6th or 7th place, you cannot wait till 3 to go. You have to start trying something and seeing what happens. And listen, if you fall off the draft pack because you tried something, odds are you're going to finish 6th or 7th. You're not going to fall back 11 seconds. But hold on, we're hearing nothing, so let's keep moving here.
The cars spinning on the back straightaway. There's no caution, though. Patrick Gitters into the grass. more drivers. Matthew Boniface in the grass as well. They were side by side in the secondary pack from P8 on back, but there is no caution. All of those cars spun onto the back straightaway grass. We stay green, and it has split that backstretch back up, so it's not as intimidating to look at. It is way more calm. Here comes Euroshak to the outside. Sebastian Marin in line. It is on, coming to 4 to go.
Got John Hall behind him. That's 3 cars here. And with that big gap in the bottom, if they get lined up here, they can make a big run at this. And now everyone's going to start to move around here. Oh, the leader moves up top, and ooh, this is getting close. Hold on, that's not clear.
Late block by the 2 Cara Warman. Euroshak forces his way through. 3 wide for the race lead in Daytona. On the outside, Derek Heitman going to get pushed by Falkenham and Joseph, and they avoid the bumper cars, and they'll go to the race lead.
All right, now if you're Conor Yershak, the best thing you can do right now is kind of do your best to wipe that from your memory. Don't let it get to you. You're probably mad at the 2 for that block, but if you let that consume you, it'll make you more nervous in these last 3.5 laps. But he'll get another run right here. He's going to try to get on the bottom, and here he comes, Evan.
Got a big push from Marin. This time, no block from the cars on the outside. And Euroshak got a little bit loose with all the pushing in the corners. 3 laps to go in Daytona. It's Heitman leading the outside. It is Euroshak leading the inside. Still 7 cars to settle the score. Lapped car up front. Leader's going to have to squeeze high to get around him. That's going to hurt Euroshak for a moment. And Heitman, I think, gets the benefit off of turn 2. Big run for the outside line.
Now Yersak will pull up here and try to get a draft again. He'll get maybe one more shot at this. Come around to 2 to go. And if that run misses, he'll likely be the end of this here. Remember, we're just trying to get around to the white flag first, then the checker. And right now they're all in line at the top of the track. Another lapped car, and we'll see what this does. He's going to stay in the bottom, I think. Yep, he is. Oh, really close,
pushing
though.
up to get some side
What the
track.
heck is that?
Heitman asked him to go low when that car was high, but that seemed like an aggressive side draft for the time machine. That's going to end up pulling up in front of line and hurting John Hall, because Hall now stuck behind the lapped car. Still, more lappers up the road. Not sure if the leaders are going to get that far. If they get to the white flag this time by, the race will be official. It's Heitman in the number 1 spot, trailed by the 10 of Falkenham and the 21 of Joseph. Looking to the inside is Euroshak. Can he and Sebastian Marin maybe do it between the 2 of them? Penultimate time off of turn 4. You see the lapped cars ahead as there is 1 lap to go in Daytona Beach.
All right, this is it. All bets are off, Evan. Everyone's going to try to make a move. Here comes Yershak at the bottom. He's got, 3 or 4 cars. This is a good run. There's the 10.
Falkenham left the 26. He drops out of line. Now he'll go right back to the outside. All over each other. Falkenham leads the top. He's got 3 cars in line. Euroshak leads the bottom. He's got 3 pushers as well. Lapped cars vacate the racetrack. It is going to be a 200-mile-an-hour drag race to settle the score. Do they all stay in line? Does anybody go for a 3rd lane? Sideways is Falkenham. What a save! Crash behind Daniel Falkenham, a Daytona 500 champion.
Oh, what a finish. Some contact, some spinning, car in the wall. None of that matters to Daniel Falkenham, who just claimed a Daytona 500 victory.
Daniel Falkenham was about a 30-degree angle on the bumper of the car behind him at a turn 4. Bounced it off the fence, Derek, and somehow still stayed in front of all of them. Leads 4 laps total en route to the win. Euroshak comes home P2. It'll be an NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series 1-2 in this top split. But only one could walk away with the hardware, and it'll be 6 Karma's Daniel Falkenham celebrating on the front straightaway as a race winner in the 2025 iRacing Daytona 500.
Wow, I mean, that was crazy. What a great save he had in the last lap with the instincts he had to make that move to the bottom. the patience all race long, it all paid off, and now he gets to burn it down and call himself a champion.
Final margin of victory as the celebration continues will clock in at 0.049 seconds. And let's watch this one unfold again. There's the push from Urashak. The 10 decides to go high. That ends up being the race winning move as we follow them down the back straightaway on the final lap.
Watch this here. This is Heitman all over the back end of the 10 and just has a slight lead over Urashak in the 17, and through the corner it's going to get more bumpy. Look at that. The 21's pushing the 26 up into the 10 and out of the corners when it gets messy here. Just some uneven bumps. Heitman puts himself in the wall, makes contact with Urashak, and that's how it ends.
And both Falkenham and Urashak got loose off of the corner there, and maybe if Urashak didn't, he would have been there on the inside, but Falkenham recovered. But in the end, the 10 stayed in front, and he puts the blue oval in victory lane. As we take a look at your iRacing full race results, again, by 5/100ths of a second, it is Daniel Falkenham over Connor Urashak and Sebastian Marin. We'll see if any of our top finishers can give us a moment to chat post-race in this one. Quentin Warman, John Hall, and then Joseph finish ahead of Derek Heitman, who ends up in the fence in that run from turn 4 to the checkered flag. And then the best of the rest goes to Aaron Vasquez, who had his own side-by-side battle to the stripe to finish ahead of Brian Mercurio and Seth the Merchant to round out your top 10.
Moving back into P11 is Chris Wilhite with Hamilton Akubezi. It comes in P12. Jack Mates, John Forbes, and Christopher Hill round out your top 15. Michael P. First in 16 and Blaze Crawford 17th, with Nicholas Roman and Kyle Brumet being the last two cars in the lead lap, and then Thomas Lloyd one lap down.
A couple more cars get to finish a lap down all the way through P25. That'll include Patrick Gitter, Noah Bitts, Matt DiChiani, Habe McClenny, and Adam Blocker. 2 laps down for James Holzer in 26th. 3 laps down for Talon Smith in 27th. 4 down for Bradley, 28th. 6 down for Boniface. He'll come home in 29th position. And then I believe Jonathan Evans is going to be the first DNF in the order in P30.
Moving back to the P31 is Christopher Pfeffer with Michael Romandas, Jacob Oster, Roberts, Maleka, Clayton Hoffman, Zach Novak, and Sean Conklin rounding out a 37-car field.
Well, that's a look top to bottom at your full race results. And again, another iRacing Daytona 500 comes and goes. In the end, this race had a little bit of all of it, but it was the early race splintering of a pack here and a pack there that would be the sign of things to come. And then after a well-executed final green flag pit stop on the night, those top 7, Derek, did the right thing. They stayed together. They waited until the 5-lap-to-go marker to go for it. And in the end, it is Daniel Falkenham in the number 10 car, who was second in line at the stripe. We were thinking about where did you want to be. He was third in line for most of the run. He was P2 at the stripe. He had the chance to make the move he wanted, and that ended up being the race-winning call.
Yeah, what a great run by Daniel Falkenham. We're going to hopefully get a word with him in a moment here. We're going to try to get him into the Race Spot Discord and have a moment to talk with him. So he's got to be over the moon, and what a great call here on strategy by Daniel Falkenham.
And it looks like we may have your race winner standing by now. Let's see if we've got your iRacing Daytona 500 champ on the radio. Daniel, you got a copy?
Yes, I got you.
Well, how about you, man? Third place for a lot of that run to the end. You top 7 did what you needed to do. You guys were buying your time, and then just kind of walk us through those crazy final 5 laps.
Yeah, I definitely got hectic there at the end, but I wanted to make sure, like, I know it was only like 5, 6, 7 of us, however many it was, but I wanted to make sure that we had enough of a gap to everyone else behind us so we could all just race for ourselves. And I think we picked the perfect time because all the Nexus boys made their move, but thankfully I didn't get hung out. But I feel like my choice there to set me up for the final last was I had to be like either first or second, but I preferably didn't want to be in the lead, but I felt like I had to get in front and control because I had 3 Redgo and 3 Nexus behind me, so I was not in a really good spot. I was kind of 1v3v3 right there, but right there at the end we just started ourselves up perfectly, and I just tried to pick whichever lane was going, and then at the end I just wanted to control because I knew, like, I was hoping all the Redco boys. I wasn't sure what they were going to do on that last lap. If they were going to try to just take my right rear and just hang me out, but appreciate them for actually pushing me so we could like kill the bottom lane. And then from there, I literally just had to block my tail off. And thankfully, we hung on to that thing. It got a little hectic there coming out of the trial or coming out of turn 4. But we did all we needed to do there to hang on right there. And man, just a good feeling to get an official 500. This is my first ever one, so it feels really good.
Well, tell us about it. I mean, you know, we're coming to the final cycle of green flag pit service. We kind of know, all right, there's 20-something cars in this lead lap. It's not really realistic to expect that after the pit cycle, all 20-something of them are going to be on the lead pack. What was the difference with you and those other 6 cars that allowed you guys to get away from everybody by such a healthy margin to be able to then decide it amongst yourselves?
Yeah, I think we just had a really good cycle because, like, I'll be honest, I was not ready for them boys to pit. With like, I think it was like coming to 40 laps to go, because I still had another couple laps to make it to try to run as long as possible in case we had like GWCs or whatnot. But I saw all of them peel off in front of me, so I just pitted with them, and thankfully we all came out right together, right? So we all had a really good pit cycle that allowed us to just get all connected and to pull away. And I felt good with the spot I was in because I, like, me being the third car, I could push those 2 cars in front so we can get our line moving, and Connor was doing a good job pushing it in the 4th car as well, because it's important to have all those cars lined up and pushing at the same time to really build your speed and try to pull away, and we did that perfectly, and that allowed us to break everyone behind us. So now, like I say, that pit cycle went about as perfect as we could, and thankfully there was no caution to come out at the end where we could all decide it for ourselves. So that's always a good feeling when you can have a great clean race there at the end. I know I had to get aggressive there trying to block all the runs, but appreciate the clean race we had up front. We could all put on a really good finish for all you great people.
We know where to find you for a lot of nights this year here on the iRacing channels, as you and the 6 car number 39 machine going to be doing battle all year long in the Coke Series. But at least for these iRacing special events, you got your first top split 500. Where else on the special events calendar where we be seeing you later this year?
Yeah, I know that, like the Coke 600 will be coming up in May. I know the Indy 500. I have never actually done an Indy 500 ever in iRacing, so we might have to try hit that one up. But there's definitely a lot of special events I'm seeing on the calendar that I definitely want to eye up. And like I said, it's my first ever top split Daytona 500 win. I'm glad we had some good luck tonight, unlike what happened at the end of the race on Tuesday. So at least we're leaving Daytona with something this week. But definitely. But other special events coming up, there's definitely a lot I want to run, especially like Indy and maybe Charlotte. But definitely looking forward to those down the road.
It's a long one, so we'll let you get out of here, Daniel. But before we do, there's a lot of folks in chat that were cheering you on. They're happy to see this win. Well, we got you. Anybody you want to say hi to?
Yeah, I just want to just shout out you guys for putting on the broadcast. Definitely shout out, like you said, shout out Six Karma. I know my paint scheme wasn't shown on the broadcast, but definitely got to shout out those boys. Means a lot to represent them. Wish we could have got them a win on Tuesday, but hopefully we're in those positions much more. But feels good to represent them. They're still new to the whole sim racing circle, but hopefully we can keep running these kind of positions, running near the front, and give them some good TV time. It's always really good. But shout out to Six Karma as always. Thanks to everyone who made it a fun race there at the end. Shout out to Connor. Let's see, who was it? Like Connors, Seabass, Heitman, Warman, all those guys up there. I'm trying to remember everyone that was up there, but appreciate all of them for having a really good, clean race there at the end. And shout out to everyone watching. Shout out to everyone who was rooting me on. I greatly appreciate it. The support means a lot. And yeah. That's about it. And also shout out Northworth Racing as well.
I tell you what, appreciate you jumping in here after it and giving us your perspective. And again, Daniel, congratulations on the win.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you so much.
He's your race winner tonight in the top split of the iRacing Daytona 500, Daniel Falkingham, the champ here on a Friday night. I think we got some more of our top finishers, Derek, that want to have a word with us. Connor Urashak was in second. Sebastian Marin was in third. I think you've got both of them standing by. Let's start with Connor, see if we've got him.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and pull Connor up in the booth. Well, Connor, 0.049. That's going to be how close you came to claiming a Daytona 500. So walk me through that last, I don't know, the back straight to the line. What were you thinking? What happened? What could you have done better?
Yeah, our kind of downfall started when me and Seabass, our Nexus teammates, so we were trying to pull Falkingham kind of out of the pack with 5 to go there, and he got picked up by Ryko, and we kind of used up some of our temp, and then from there on we were kind of in the back of that train, so we ended up taking our run to the bottom, but it just never really materialized in the way we needed. to ever actually have a run on Falkingham to take the lead. It's too hard when the outside lane stays committed and they can come down and side draft you. It's just really hard for the inside lane to pull ahead, especially when there's that few numbers in the group.
So I know you had your spotter Zach Kerr up helping you tonight. So walk me through the emotion when Zach tells you there's contact coming out of 4 and you hear that Falkingham and I think Heitman had made contact. Were you throttle? You're never gonna lift coming out of 4 like that. So I mean, I'm out of 4. I'm looking at my right monitor and I saw Falkingham kind of get turned. And I was like, oh, I might have a shot. But like just kind of how he got turned, he was able to regain his momentum with the push. And then at that point, I kind of knew that was all she wrote. So there's, I think, 3 more fixed runs and 1 more Open Daytona 500 this weekend. Since you came up a little short, are you doing more or is this it?
It's hard to say. I'm gonna probably play it by ear. It takes a lot out of the back sitting for this long, but we'll see. It's definitely a good time. I thought the fixed race was honestly a little more enjoyable. Just the pack seemed to stay together way better. Like it obviously worked out good for our group to break away like that, but for the majority of the race, single file, I think if I were to do another, it'd definitely be fixed.
All right, Connor. Well, obviously you represent Letarte Esports. You've been racing. We'll be racing with them every other Tuesday night this year. But anyone you want to give a shout out to or give thanks to after?
Oh yeah, of course. I'll shout out all my Letarte Esports people and Sunoco for sponsoring us this year. They weren't obviously showing on the broadcast, but of course they're a big part of what I do, and just want to make sure they get the thanks they deserve.
All right. Well, listen. Well, great run tonight. P2, obviously not the ending you wanted, but a great showing regardless.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
That is Connor Yershak, and he's finishing P2. We'll go ahead and swap that out with Sebastian Marin. Sebastian, the Nexus Esports partner of the P2 finish. You guys finished 2-3. What's your thoughts after 500 miles of racing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess first off, congrats to Falkingham there and everybody in that pack that we had there, racing it clean there and kind of pulling away from the big pack behind, and yeah, that was kind of a bit calmer 500, I think, than most people were expecting. But yeah, I think like Connor was saying, just kind of timed our move a little bit wrong, and then when Falkingham got picked up, we kind of knew at that point that, you know, we used up our temps, they were going to stay lined up, and then our move into 1, we knew that either Falkingham or one of the other Ryko drivers were just going to come down in front of us, obviously, to take the run. And that was our only option, because we couldn't wait until turn 3, because then the outcome was just going to be the same. We kind of had to do it early enough to see if anything materialized entering turn 3, and it almost happened. But Falkingham did a good job coming off of 4, saving it and keeping up his momentum. And then at that point, it was just a run to the line. And if we were at Talladega, we would have had a shot. But we're here at Daytona, where the finish line is a couple thousand feet before. So, you know, can't be too disappointed. Obviously, clean race. We were there. We had a shot. So overall, I would say a good race.
You know, Sebastian, you just marked off someone's broadcast bingo card, because Evan and I went all night without mentioning the start-finish line for Daytona and Talladega. So someone out there just got a bingo off of your post-race interview there. But I did want to ask you, you said the race was calm, but it stood out to me because, I mean, there was that run, I think, after the first set of pit stops where you guys just swapped the lead like every lap. It felt like you were up there. Then, you know, I think Heitman was up there, and everyone sort of swapped the lead for a while. So you say it was a calm race, but how did that part of the race feel? Was that just adrenaline pumping, or what was going on there?
Oh, I love that part of the race. I think it was in the point of the race where it was still long enough that nobody was thinking super long-term strategy, and they were just racing to have fun. I think at that point, people were, you know, we got that yellow to get everybody packed up. Everybody did a much better job to stay in a pack. You know, we didn't battle unnecessarily to start losing the pack like we did the first run. And yeah, once the yellow came out after that, it kind of forced everybody into a strategy if you wanted, right, to make it to the end on fuel. That's why we single filed out afterwards, and it kind of forced majority of the field's hands to do so. We had a strategy because when the Ryko cars got to the front, we knew they had to pit a lap or two before us. So with like 10 to go, we just started pushing the pace to see if we can catch people off guard and lose the pack. And that's exactly what happened. And the rest was history. So yeah, I kind of wish that energy that we had through that middle portion stayed out through the whole race, because that was a whole lot of fun. But I mean, it's just the cards that were dealt with a strategy there. So nobody's fault, but definitely wish it would have been a bit more, less fuel dependent, and we could have raced it out a bit more. But can't be too upset with that.
So there's, I think, 3 more fixed and 1 more Open Daytona 500 this weekend. You came in 3rd tonight. Are you inclined to do another one to try to get that W, or is this the end of the road for 2025?
I think I will try to do one more. I might try to do, I think there's one tomorrow, right? Around noon Eastern.
Tomorrow. Once at 5 a.m. Eastern.
Tomorrow.
That's probably not in the schedule for you.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, definitely not that one. But I definitely want to do one more. Hopefully my other teammates, we can kind of pick which one's the best for us, and then we can give it another stab at it. But yeah, I definitely want to do another one. That was a lot of fun.
Well, Sebastian, listen, it was great watching all night. Great run, and hopefully we'll see you in some of the future special events.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a good night, guys.
All right, that is Sebastian Marin. He finished P3 tonight, Evan, and that wraps up our podium interviews.
And it's funny to have a thrilling finish like that. All the near misses, the near wrecks, the good saves, and for the takeaway from a lot of drivers to be, it was pretty calm for a 500. You look at the big picture, yes, right? Lots of strategy. The field got split up on multiple occasions, and you were just kind of waiting for somebody to ruin it for that lead group of 7. That second pack tried. They were too wide and spun out and wrecked 2 cars on the backstretch. Those leaders very, very fortunate that does not bring out a yellow. And in the end, it shows that you can have a race that has some pit strategy, that has fuel strategy, that isn't all crazy, but can still have some really memorable moments. And as we put this one behind us, again, if you still want to participate in this iRacing Daytona 500, you've got more opportunities this week. But as we put this one behind us and look forward to the rest of our iRacing special events calendar here with special presentations of RaceSpot and iRacing Live, at least on the NASCAR side of things, beyond the Indy 500, you look at the Coke 600, Firecracker 400, the Brickyard 400, the next 3 on deck.
Yeah, what a great schedule this is this year. There's something every month, I think, on the calendar. So Bathurst 12 next weekend here live on the iRacing Network and part of RaceSpot's broadcasting package. So lots of great stuff coming, Evan. I'm excited. And there's still more 500s this weekend. I might get back behind the car again. I'm feeling the itch after watching tonight's race.
Okay. Well, if you're going on track for the rest of the week, enjoy it. And if not, we hope that we see you next time as the Bathurst 12 Hour will be the next of RaceSpotTV's iRacing special events coverage. Until then, though, that is it for us here tonight. On behalf of our entire team, for the folks at iRacing, RaceSpot, and for your broadcast team tonight, for our producer, Hugo Luis, for Derek Watson, and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to say thanks for tuning in and congratulations to a first-time top split Daytona 500 champion, Daniel Falkenham, who finds victory in 2025. Good night.